Is there approval of tonight's agenda, April 12th agenda? Motion to approve, excuse me.
Mr. President.
Yes.
I move that the board approve the April 12th, 2021 agenda.
Second.
And a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed, say no. All right. All right, report of board members. Do any board members have anything they would like to share with us this evening? And just to remind everybody, put yourselves on mute when you're not speaking. All right, we'll go straight to report of superintendent, Dr. Markley.
Thank you, Mr. President. Start with the legislative update. Now that the 2021 legislative session is headed toward the home stretch, obviously, and only 5 weeks are left in the session. However, there are numerous issues that are yet to be determined for this legislative session. Issues still to be determined before the end of the session are the COVID-19 liability, spending priorities for the COVID-19 federal stimulus funds, statewide gas tax, regulating illegal gaming machines, Medicaid expansion funding, numerous school choice reform proposals, eminent domain mandates, regulation of Christian-based boarding schools, property tax assessment issues, numerous public safety mandates, child custody issues, TIF reform, and Wayfair tax. Now, I say that to kind of give you set it up here so you can hit it off the tee. That is a lot of things that have to get done in 5 weeks, and the chances of one, anything passing or not passing, more likely not passing on the education reform side is not going to happen unless they can roll it all up into a large omnibus bill and get enough support for that. Now, there are obviously some controversial things out there for education, and we've talked about some of those in the past, but some of the most recent ones that could be hurtful to schools. One of those got a hearing in the House Ways and Means Committee last week. It's House Joint Resolution 57, sponsored by Representative John Wyman. It would totally eliminate personal property taxes in the state of Missouri by 2027, should the voters of the state approve it. This measure, if approved, would cost local governments and political subdivisions nearly $2 billion in revenue a year. It would cost local school districts $900 million in revenue a year. We are certainly keeping a close eye on that one. Also last week, another issue that would have been devastating to school districts by significantly reducing revenues to the districts is House Bill 248, sponsored by Representative Jeff Coleman, who was perfected and placed on the House third reading calendar. Under his bill, residential real property could have only increased in value by 2% every 2 years, which is basically the CPI, and would have given a one-time reduction of 20% in value up front to all residential real property, which could be devastating to districts as well. That bill has seemed to have stalled in the House. It's not being supported in the Senate. Neither one of the property tax bills are being supported in the Senate and could likely die there. The big controversial thing that they're going to have to get done between now and the end of the legislative year is what are they going to do about the Medicaid funding in the budget? Because the voters passed expansion of Medicaid. Now, the House Budget Chair would tell you they may have passed the expansion of Medicaid, but they did not fund it. And that is the job of the legislature. So we'll see where that fight goes. The governor has put that in his budget for the coming fiscal year. And it's going to be a fight, obviously, in the General Assembly. And if it's not passed, then it will be a fight in the courts, likely from there. So I say all that to say that it is going to cause the legislative process probably to come to a grinding halt over the last 5 weeks as they try to figure out what they're going to do with some of these key agenda items that they have. Any questions? Okay, I'll now ask Dr. Moore and also Dr. Mixon to maybe give us a little brief update what's going on in the elementaries and also on the secondary side of things. We can start with you, Dr. Moore. Are you out there?
I'm here. Good evening, everybody. Share a couple of highlights. First of all, Eastwood Hills Elementary, thanks to Bike KC, in conjunction with Children's Mercies Hospital, donated 35 helmets, bicycle helmets to students, the second graders, and bike safety lessons were presented to their students. With Flea Ridge Elementary, an important component of their readathon. Most schools had a readathon going on last month, and they were collecting canned goods and non-perishable items for REAP. And the Fleet Ridge students and staff brought in over 1,600 items for REAP. I thought that was very exciting. At Robinson Elementary, for this last year at virtual, the staff got together and created a Black History program, virtual. The first one they had, I was part of. They interviewed me. I did a little session. There were different staff members from around the district, as well as some parents who helped. And then they also showed it virtually to all their parents in the evening, and showed it at school during the day to the students. And there was some good history and some good lessons from that. That was exciting. Also, the Southwood PTA fundraising sold over $8,000 worth of trash bags, estimated $3,000, a little over $3,000 profit, which was exciting. And also, Robinson Elementary participated in the Lead to Feed campaign and collected a lot of items to benefit the Sheffield's Place, which is a shelter. And finally, there was it was really, really exciting at Spring Valley. They actually are committed to their trauma smart professional development. In March, their focus centered around affect, modulation, and expression, which is learning how to express and regulate your emotions. And students learn how to integrate the use of calming tools for students, which we thought was very, very helpful for our kids. And finally, Lower Hills was selected as the Caring for Kids of the Month most exciting partner. So that's all for elementary I want to share today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. Dr. Mixon?
Dr. Mixon is not going to be able to get on. She got on early and then got booted. And we're trying to figure out how to get her back into the participation right now.
All right, we'll come back to her. She's comes back. I want to slide on down to 6.7 because I know Dr. Huff is going to spend some time here on our academic recovery plan update. Dr. Huff.
Thank you very much, Dr. Markley. Rachel, if you could, or whoever is running our show here, if we get the slide presentation up, that'd be fabulous. We are going to talk a little bit tonight about what we're doing for our recovery plan. We all know that COVID was very difficult on our students as well as our staff. And as I've said many times when we talk about these sort of items, I want to thank our staff for the amazing work that they've done to keep our students in the place that they are at. I do believe that our students have a smaller lag than they would have had if we wouldn't have had such an amazing staff in place to give a great instruction, whether it be virtually or in person over the last year. We are sitting in a nice position, but we have seen a lag, and that lag has, go on to the next slide. The lag has been mostly in K-1-2, which is no surprise. That would be natural. Our kindergarten through first graders or second graders really aren't used to being in an online environment. It's also very difficult to teach things like phonological awareness in that sort of a setting. So our teachers have done the very best they can, but we have seen lags there. And so we have had discussions about what are we going to do to get our students back up to speed. So we are focusing in math and reading as foundational skills that all other areas are contingent upon. So that is our major focus as we present this recovery plan. We do recognize that there's lags in achievement in all areas. Our choir teachers have trouble with our students and keeping them up to speed, as does our science teachers and social studies teachers and facts teachers. All of these areas are very difficult to teach in the online environment. However, we do believe that the foundational skills of math and reading build on all of these areas. And so that is going to be our focus as we move forward through this plan. So next slide. Just as a reminder, when we talk about recovery, we first need to determine where are we? And so we determine where we are through the assessment of students. Assessments can be broken down into really two major types of assessments. We have criterion reference assessments and we have norm referenced assessments. The criterion reference assessments is a fancy name for the typical tests that you would take as a student. Those weekly or sometimes even daily checks for understanding is what they are. Criterion meaning that it's referencing the standards, the state standards that we're teaching to all through the year, that we prioritize as educators. These tests are seeing whether students are meeting those standards or not meeting those standards. And those are, as the slide shows, those are our typical district common assessments we give through Edulastic, our pre-formative, formative, and summative assessments that we give all through the year. We also give what we call norm reference tests. Those are tests that compare students with other students. So the big one that we give is the STAR test. And the STAR test we gave this year for reading. We decided not to give the STAR test this year for math because we did not feel that it was testing our students in the way that we wanted them to be tested, because it focused too much on computation. And we really are focused on the process of math. We want students to understand. And so we did lean heavily on our criterion reference based tests for math. The GLA practice test was given. That is really more of a norm reference test. I'm sorry, it's more of a criterion reference test. There were some norm referenced capacities with it, we thought. We were somewhat disappointed in the ability for the MOLEAP to deliver on those norm referenced promises. So that's where we assess our students. If you go to the next slide, please. Once we determine where our lags are, we had some long discussions and developed plans around how can we bring our students back up to speed. So one is to expand our summer learning academy opportunities in summer school. So we have typically invited several students to July summer school, where we do focus on math and reading deficiencies with students. And it's very successful. Our students have done quite well with this. So we would like to expand that. We are planning on expanding that into June, and we're also planning on expanding it up to 8th grade. So in June, this will not be we won't separate students away. We'll do more like we do in the regular school year, where we pull students out of the regular learning environment, bring them into small groups, and address specific learning needs, whether it be in math or reading. And then the July Summer Learning Academy will be focused in small groups with just that focus on math and reading. So there's a potential for some students to be in summer school for both months. You'll notice that in all of these slides, we are given some detail about what this specific strategy is, as well as the cost and the progress where we're at to this point. So I'll address all of those things. The cost for Summer Learning Academy is negligible because DESE provides us with a reimbursement. And progress, we are already well on our way to inviting students to participate with an SLA with us. And we are close to capacity already with a number of invitees who have already enrolled. Okay, next slide. It probably would work best to wait till the end, but if you need to ask me something partway through, please stop me. Okay, it's fine. Yes. All right. So retention is a really negative word in the educational setting. Research is pretty solid that retention is a bad thing. Now, the research mostly though focuses on retention that is not grade specific. And we do know that retention of older students almost always results in the student being more likely to drop out. So that's why we were focusing on K2 only for retention. And it's only when we have poor attendance, and it's only when we have good partnerships with the parent. So these are students that have not gotten the instruction whatsoever because they aren't coming to school. So we feel it is best in some of these cases for that student to go ahead and repeat a grade. We have seen success with the young students, K1, 2, and when it's very specialized. We are not talking about a lot of students here. We're only talking about a handful of students in each school. We have done this for the, traditionally we have done this with the younger students, maybe a handful of students, 5 to 10 each year. We do not anticipate this going very much higher because we do really believe that this is a last ditch effort, but it is appropriate for some students. And we will continue to identify and work with those parents in the future. Dr. Moore and the principals will be the ones who are spearheading that effort. Okay, next slide. Virtual tutoring for secondary students. We are already doing this. We are finding it also to be quite successful for those students who are participating, and we are specifically inviting many students to participate in this virtual tutoring. This is what our Wednesdays are right now, and we are seeing some success with that. We're going to continue that through the remainder of this year. Adding 5 elementary, next slide, adding 5 elementary supplemental math teachers. This is a long name for math specialists. We are not calling them math specialists though, because we are not expecting these teachers to go out and get the math specialist certification. These teachers will work hand in glove with a math specialist in a building. We are going to, we've already posted these positions, are going to begin the hiring process soon. They will be assigned to elementary buildings based on need. So they won't be evenly distributed amongst the 10 elementary schools. They'll be assigned based on need. This is going to cost us around $300,000. And as I had said, these positions have been posted. All right, next slide. We're going to go back to 20 reading IAs. That's what we had before. We had a reduction some years back. We are going back to those and bring those 20 reading IAs back in. They are outstanding in providing assistance to the reading specialist and just giving those students volumes of practice. So that comes down to obviously 2 IAs per building. That makes for a nice reading team. We are also going to add 30% of one reading specialist to Eastwood Hills. This is part of a grant that we have applied for and received from the Kauffman Foundation. However, the Kauffman Foundation didn't quite cover the entire cost of one reading specialist, so we'll be covering the other 30% of that through this process. And that is coming from the ESSER 3 grant. $600,000 for the IAs, $20,000 for the non-grant position for the reading specialist. Progress, we will be posting those IAs soon, and the reading specialist position has been posted. All right, next slide. Realigning instructional and prioritized standards. We know that we missed a lot of instruction. And so the reprioritization for the remainder of this year is to make sure that for the rest of this year, we're teaching students what they need to know and not focusing on everything, but those critical items. That's what prioritized standards means. It is impossible for any school to teach all of the state standards. And so we go through a prioritization process. We reprioritize for this year to make sure that we hit the very most important standards. This summer, we'll be spending time also doing some reprioritization for next year. For this particular effort has no cost because one, we did it all during kind of on the fly for this spring, and we will be we typically do reprioritization and curriculum writing in the summer anyway. We're going to use those same funds that we would typically use for that process this summer. And as I had mentioned, we have completed that process for the spring, and we'll be doing the process for the fall this summer. The last slide, increasing the school year from 169 to 173 days. You may remember that for this particular year, it's the first year that DESE allowed us to count by hours rather than by days for students. So we were able to actually drop down to 169 days. We feel that those 4 days are pretty critical for our kiddos. And so this board's already approved the calendar for next year, which has 173 days in it, so that we can capture as much time as possible for our kids. We think the best place for our kids to be is with a teacher in school. All right, so that is our plan in a nutshell, and I will entertain any questions.
Sorry, I have a question. You mentioned the invitations for the summer school. Are they already responding to that?
Yes, sir, they are.
Okay. and I take it's a good response.
It is. We're nearly at capacity. Now, reality is that we know that we have to actually go above capacity, because even though they commit now, when July rolls around, sometimes it's difficult to get a student, for that family to get that student motivated to go and come in July. So we typically over commit, because we know that not everybody's going to come.
Okay, and you also mentioned pulling out kids into smaller groups for math and reading.
Yes.
Do you have an idea how small the group will be?
Those groups are typically 3 to 7. Seven would be probably large. Most of them around 5 kids when those specialists pull those kids out, and it's a really neat setting to see. They'll bring them into their area, and they'll have maybe a kidney table where the teacher will sit in the middle. All 5 or so of the students will be working on their own individual skills, and the teacher can spend individual time with each one of them sitting around the table. They're pretty fascinating to watch them go through the process.
I've worked doing that myself, and having that small group is really successful into catching the kids up.
It is.
And when I participated,
of all the things that we have been able to document, that has been the one intervention that we have seen have the strongest results.
Yeah.
Dr. Huff.
Yes, sir.
I've never known you to be extravagant. If anything, you're very conservative in what you ask for. You're mindful of costs. And I guess my concern is, this is a time when asking for resources is clearly appropriate, if not essential. So how can I be assured that you don't need more resources, and that you're being politely conservative in what you're asking for?
Well, I will say this, that Dr. Shelton and Dr. Markley and I work closely together in what can be or what is reasonably affordable. We do feel that this falls in nice line with which we should reasonably be asking for. And you'll notice that the costs that we are looking at are really entirely focused on staff with students directly. And that is our priority. We feel that is the best bang for our buck. We should be focused on making sure that students are going to be successful. Part of what I didn't include in here, but does also come with a price tag. We have substantial resources, electronic resources that we have added on to this year. And so part of the process that Dr. Shelton and I are going to go through in the next few weeks is looking at which of those resources we should keep. And we do anticipate keeping quite a number of things for at least one more year that have proven to be beneficial for us. Yes.
Well, any other building?
Ms. Tittle, you're still on mute.
Well,
Go ahead, Ms. Tittle.
Will any other buildings have a reading specialist?
Every building will have a reading specialist. Eastwood Hills will have 2.
Okay, I thought we didn't have those anymore.
So we do. Remember this year, what we did is we pulled all of them back into classrooms so that we could have a smaller class sizes. We're going to put all 20 of them, 10 reading specialists and 10 math specialists, will all go back into the classroom again next year.
Good. And then Eastwood will have 2.
Eastwood will have 2, yes, because of the grant.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Huff. Item 6.8 is the South High Performing Arts Center and Gymnasium. We've asked Hollis and Miller, particularly Sandy Cochran, to lead us through kind of an update on where everything's at with the design process of that, the design. It's been some time since we looked at it. We've had some questions in previous board meetings about the current auditorium that is at South High, and it's the safety of it, which it is safe and it is holding. And I believe we did look at the stress gauges last month to see and discussed it here in this board meeting. But I've asked them to come and talk about where they're at, and we'll also talk a little bit about financing, particularly of this project, at the end of that presentation. So do we have Sandy online? Sandy, you out there?
Good evening, Dr. Markley. Hello, everyone. It's good to see you. Thank you for letting us join tonight.
Yes, Sandy.
So if you're ready, I'll go ahead and share my screen.
There she is. Can you hear me, Sandy?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can't hear you. Can anybody hear Sandy?
Yes, we can hear Sandy.
Oh.
Okay.
Just Dr. Markley can't, so.
Now I can hear her.
Can you hear me?
Okay.
Is that better?
Perfect.
Okay. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for letting us join you again tonight. What we plan to review, there was a request that came to talk about the additions that we previously discussed for South High School, the possibility of a new auditorium and auxiliary gym. So what we'd like to do tonight is talk about a little bit of history of what led to this project, what we've done over the last year, and where we ended up after wrapping documents last year as well. So feel free to stop me if you guys have any questions as I walk through this. So first, I'd like to start with a timeline. Some of you are pretty familiar with this, but we're just going to do a brief overview. So in November of 2017, the damage on the south stage wall was observed by our team and brought to our attention from your staff at Raytown Quality Schools. We took a look at that damage and assessed that the wall was moving on the south side. Rotostructural report had some ideas on how we could address that damage. In February of 2018, additional movement was observed on that wall again, showing that it was becoming unstable. So at that point, the board decided to approve and have that south wall replaced, which happened during March of 2019 through July of 2019. During the construction, or during the observation and replacement of that wall, the west wall was also assessed and realized that it was in jeopardy of also failing. The Board of Education approved the design and documentation for a new auditorium auxiliary gym while the west wall was being replaced. And then January of 2020 through August of 2020, we worked on the design and documentation of the new Performing Arts Center and auxiliary gym for South High School. And during that process, we worked with administrators. Mr. Moore was part of the committee that reviewed designs and what could be involved in that project. And so what we'd like to talk about tonight is some of the items that we reviewed during that design. So on that committee, we had the principal of South High School, a couple parents, athletic directors, theater and fine arts directors, students. As I mentioned, Mr. Moore was there, as well as several members of our design team. So there were several players who were involved in this design review who gave feedback and buy-in on the decisions that were made and how to orient the different spaces. So this board was aware of possibilities of where the new auditorium and gym could possibly be placed. When conversations happened about what type of auditorium could be added, there was a value that was realized that South High School does not have an auxiliary gym. They have a main gym, but they don't have an auxiliary. Raytown High School has an auxiliary gym. So at that point, this board, as well as the design committee, decided that an auxiliary gym would be a benefit to this high school. And at that time, the orientation of a new auditorium that could be expanded in size, allow for a fly loft, as well as stagecraft and other design pieces to assist in that fine art program were added on, which meant that footprint got bigger. So what to do with that leftover space where the auditorium used to be, the thought was a new auxiliary gym could be placed in that place. So during the design, we talked about different types of forms and really architecty and design ideas. And one of the ones that we landed on was we called it tectonic, but what that was allowing shapes to move and form. And what we thought was very important during this phase was tying into the existing form architectural design of the existing high school that would enhance it, but also not fight against it. And so these were some of the concept images that we used during design, played with light and form so that we weren't just building new brick and mortar boxes. They actually brought some interest to that side of the building. So from there, we started to talk about how to arrange spaces inside these new additions. So in this plan, on the right-hand side, you'll see the existing main gymnasium. And to the north, a new performing arts center, pre-function, stage and stagecraft area. Another decision that was made during design was to add a classroom for the theater students. Currently, their classroom was over next to the existing auditorium, which on the left-hand side of your screen is the auxiliary gym now, or will be planned for in the future. And also part of this addition was reorganizing the corridors between the gymnasium and the new auxiliary gym to allow for breakout spaces and collaboration spaces for students. So the new pre-function entry space adjacent to the auditorium faces the northwest parking lot. This new PAC addition would sit in the existing parking lot and driveway that drives from the top parking lot down towards the fields now, which means that drive would get reoriented around the side of the building. It allows for a stagecraft area, which South High School does not currently have, a new fly-loft system, a sloped seating area leading up to the stage. And then on the back portion of the auditorium, you can see some seating that looks a little bit different. Now, this was something that came out of discussions with the team and the committee, was that a separate space that we use for other functions would be usable, whether it is for band and choir practice, cheerleading, wrestling, etc. So that space on the back is flat, and all of that seating telescopes and pockets back to the back of the room to allow those spaces to be used independently of each other. And then there is a movable partition in between the two seating areas so that they can be separated visually and acoustically as well. For the auxiliary gym, what has been added there is an ICC 500 storm shelter. Raytown City upgraded to 2018 building codes, which with that requirement, it was needed to add to the spaces, meaning the new storm shelter had to adhere to ICC 500 standards. This is allowing the entire student body to be able to house and shelter if there is a storm threat within one space. So, sorry, I lost my train of thought. The need for this auxiliary gym to be ICC 500 standards is a lot easier for us to design rather than having the auditorium be that ICC 500 space. It is possible, but with the need of the school, with the enhancement of the school by an auxiliary gym as well as an auditorium, the ICC 500 gym is much easier to build if it's an auxiliary gym. So zooming in on these spaces just a little bit, I explained already what's happening on the backside of the auditorium with that flat space. The stage is again telescoping to the front. We have stagecraft, classroom, a new makeup and dressing area, new restrooms, concessions, and then an open area for pre-function for people to gather as they come for performances as well as competitions in the main gym. On the auxiliary gym, there's a full-size court. Basketball, volleyball, as well as telescoping bleachers are available in this new gym. In that corridor, outside of that gym, we have those collaborative spaces that I referenced before, as well as added storage, an officials locker room, and built-in display cases for the many awards that South High School has been able to display through the years. So now I'm going to move into some of the exterior views of what this building will look like from the outside. So as you approach the building from the north and then to the west, this is a view of the new expansion with the PAC on the left-hand side and the new auxiliary gym on the right-hand side. So the new pre-function entry point will look similar to this with a canopy over that entry, clear story windows above it to allow light to come in, and new windows in between each new concrete plate on the left-hand side. Those are precast concrete partitions that are helping to bring light into that new pre-function space. So if, as part of the addition, we brought on a graphic arts design artist to talk with the team on what they could possibly want to name this new expansion, and then what the signage could look like from the north. So the view that you're seeing on the left-hand side is visible from 350 Highway. So we thought this would be a great spot to be able to identify this expansion, Raytown South, and with a cardinal stamped into the concrete that's visible from quite far away. And then the decision was made at the time that this new entry point should not just talk about the Performing Arts Center, but also about this new field house that is accessible as well. This is another view from the parking lot, looking at those tall plates that are enhancing the front side of the auditorium. This is the view if you get closer to the building of the auxiliary gym from the outside. This is if you were looking at the existing auditorium now, this is that same corner. This is where the existing auditorium is placed currently. And then as you move around the backside of the additions, we did want to pay attention to materials and what those forms looked like. So the view that you have on the left-hand side, that face that says Raytown South Cardinals on the top is facing the east. So you'll be able to see that from the athletic fields. We didn't want to not pay attention to this side of the building because it is very visible from the fields. And then the view on the right-hand side is as you come around the side of the new building, down the new drive, those windows go into the new classroom that the theater students will use, and then access to the locker rooms on the lower level. And then I just want to mention briefly some of the materials that we talked about using on this new building. So as we mentioned, the existing building was built in the mid-century 1950s. And we didn't want to ignore what was already there, but we wanted to enhance as well. And so that is what you're seeing here. We're accessing with concrete that's stamped with patterns, some burnished block on the backside, metal panel that has a pattern to it, and then terracotta panels that are set into the forms above the concrete to bring in some of that brick pattern and color on the existing school. And then as we move into the interior, are there any questions before I continue? Okay. So as you enter that new pre-function into this space, leading you to the new auditorium and main gym and auxiliary gym, this is essentially what you would see. We have polished concrete floors enhanced with a stained pattern that pick up the stamped concrete pattern on the exterior, not only on the floor, but also on the walls. We have concealed lighting that's also accented with linear lighting above. And then you have light coming through on the backside with another clear story window introducing natural light. On the right-hand side, that is the new concession stands. And what you would see as you walk in to either buy tickets or concessions for games that you're getting ready to attend. This is a view looking back at that pre-function. Again, a lot of glass and entry as you walk in. We wanted to light this space up, not allow it to feel too dark, and really feel welcoming and professional for people who come and enjoy performances or games at the new additions. And then as you enter into the auditorium, this is a view if you're entering, little map is down on the right-hand side. You can see the image of an eye looking forward. That's essentially where you would enter. So right in the middle of the auditorium. And as we mentioned, we have slope seating on the front. And then to the left that you can't see in this view yet is the flat portion of the floor with the telescoping seating that moves back. So the idea here was this is a modern more type of design where the stage, the sound stage and lighting booth are in the center of the auditorium to allow better sound and visual of what's happening on the stage. And then this is a view of that telescoping seating on the backside and how that would push back. And then up above in the center and between those two doors, if you follow that line all the way up, that's where that movable partition will drop down and separate the two spaces, allowing for that multi-use of the space. And so, as I mentioned, this space is programmed to be used for multiple reasons, not just for auditorium and fine arts. Also worked in that you don't see views of in some of the renderings is the idea that this space could be used for e-gaming in the future. So we've placed wiring outlets and areas for future build out for large screen projection, as well as upgraded audio and technology. So that equipment's not included in this package, but it could be purchased and installed later. But the backup wiring and outlets are replaced. And the idea is that not only could e-gaming be used in this space, but it could be used for training, seminars, speakers to come in, and then having that flexible seating allows for smaller productions to be held on the front side, while that back side can be used for different class activities, athletics, etc. And then as you move around from the auditorium, these are those collaboration spaces that are in the corridor. This is a new concept for the high school. A lot of discussion on this because right now there's not a lot of open spaces for collaborations for students that isn't in the classroom. So this is something that the school wanted to experiment with for the students to be able to use an independent study as well as directed through class, but putting some different thoughts and ideas, graphics on the wall, enhancing that cardinal, and then allowing for display for awards all the way down the hallway was something that was important to the school. And this is another view of that space, what it could look like. So marker boards on the wall, as well as smart screens or TVs for instruction. And this is a view of what the new auxiliary gym could look like from the inside. Very much looking similar to the main gym, which is getting a renovation this summer. Likely we'll have cardinal on the wall mats, new wood floor, basketball, volleyball, and telescoping speaker bleachers. And this is a view from the other side. And that is your update on South High addition. Any questions?
Are we getting into the as far as completion of when the schedule of completion of design and the cost of the estimate on to build this? Is that coming later? Are we getting ready to discuss that?
Sure.
I think we're primarily going to discuss, we got an idea, a ballpark figure what that might be, but I think we'd rather discuss what, when and how a bond issue could cover this and what we might recommend. Also knowing that maybe Sandy needs to reiterate on the life expectancy of the walls that we rebuilt, particularly the west wall in the current auditorium. But Steve is going to jump in and give our timeline and our recommendation when we might go out and seek to build this building.
So as far as just the design completion and as far as the estimate of the construction cost, that's what Steve's gonna.
Well, Steve, I think Sandy could probably give a construction cost, and we have, I think, done that in the past, what we thought it would be, but that's obviously going to increase with the amount of time that we're looking to go out, potentially get this thing done through a bond issue.
Right.
Inflation. So Sandy, do you want to answer what Mr. Burton is referring to as what we think the cost is today if we were to start building it this summer, as opposed to what we might anticipate in the next 2 to 3, 4 years?
Sure. So, Mr. Burton, the estimates that we received at the end of design, we had a construction partner pulling together building estimates for us while we were in design. There were some additions and tweaks from this plan. As I mentioned early on, we added a classroom, we expanded some of the stage spaces as desired by the school and by the teaching staff. So earlier estimates were lower from what we shared back in 2019. The newer estimates came in around 16 million for both additions. And if you wait, each year that you wait, you will see inflation costs push that up as you would expect. Now the lifespan on the west wall, as we've talked about before, that was designed to be a permanent structure. However, because we did not come in and do new masonry walls and further support the foundation loads on that side, that wall is programmed to last approximately 5 years, possibly a few years longer, but not much past that. Those materials are not intended to last past that.
And so
Sandy, I can't see you. This screen shows the presentation. Can we switch back? I can see there. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
So have we the new auxiliary gym with demo demo those walls, right?
Yes, so the way we have the project currently designed and phased is the new PAC would be constructed first. Then the corridor in between the main gym and the current auditorium would be demolished, rebuilt, and then the new auxiliary gym would go where the existing auditorium is. So the existing auditorium would be the last thing to be demolished and replaced.
And,
So they would be able to continue to use that space until the new auditorium was completed.
and this design is complete.
Yes, we are ready. We're done to
Can
send
you-
it out for bid and have it
Can you
constructed.
remind me of how much that design costs?
Mhm. Dr. Shelton, you have some of those costs pulled together. Do you want to cover that portion?
I do. I'd like to share my screen. Is that possible?
Yes, you should be good to go.
Okay. Here, let me.
Sandy, can I ask a question while he's bringing that up?
Sure.
So the design's complete, but the schedule is not going to be as ambitious as what we thought in the beginning. So what kind of updates will be needed in 2 years or so when the project does start to get underway?
So what we'll need to do is we'll need to go back in and just verify our drawings are still up to date with materials, codes, etc. Should be a fairly light update, shouldn't take too long. But you know, when you shelve a project and then you pick it back up to put it out, we always want to go back through and verify that everything is still correct. Another thing we'll want to take a look at is schedule. So as I mentioned with the phasing, we were hoping that if construction on the new auditorium could start, then the corridor between the main gym and the auxiliary gym would happen over a summer so that there are no students in the building, meaning that they could come back and then be able to use that space to access the new auditorium in the fall of start of the school year. So we'll just need to take a look at that phasing and make sure that that's lining up and what's going to work for the school. And if it doesn't specifically when you want to start, then we'll just need to adjust some of those items.
All right, thank you. You were on mute on, so.
Sorry.
How long will construction last once it's started?
15 to 18 months.
And Sandy, is that 15 to 18 months just for the auditorium or 15 to 18 months for both projects?
For both.
Could I ask a question? I still can't see Sandy. Is there a way that I can see Sandy?
Here, let me, yes, try that now.
Okay, thank you. Now, I keep, there's going back to the history of this situation. And so I went back in the minutes and I found that we made a decision. We didn't vote on the decision, but there was some language to the effect that we were going to do a design phase, and that was in October of 2019. But we never voted on a contract to do the design phase, and I think we may need to patch that up at some point by approving what we've spent. But I don't see it in the minutes. But the second issue that I tried to clarify was, what did we agree to when we examined the lifespan of the improvements, the final improvements? And I've heard 1 to 3 years, and I've heard others, but what I found in the minutes was a presentation, and I don't know if you put it together or who did, but option one, number one in that presentation anticipated that we would begin to use the gym and the auditorium in the fall of 2027, which was I guess 7 years. That was option one, and then there were other options. But so I'm troubled. The sense of concern on the safety of the wall. I don't quite understand how we, from time to time, speak in terms of the imminent destruction of the property, while at the same time, when we began to discuss this, we discussed it within terms of 5 to 10 years. And I've never really understood, how does a building become unsafe if it's appropriately covered and caulked and the like? I mean, so the second question is, we had an engineer said this thing, we're doing what's prudent. I have a letter here from the engineer. I don't share your sense of urgency that you sometimes bring to the table with respect to this project. Can you help me with that? Am I wrong on the data that I've looked at? Is there other data that maybe you could bring to my attention?
Okay, so I'm going to back up just a little bit. When the damage for the south and west wall was first discovered, the decision was made by this board to go ahead and replace the south wall, because at that time, that wall was the only wall that was failing. It was actively moving, and it was a safety concern. While that wall was under construction, we realized the west wall was also failing, and we were seeing deflection from wind speed. As that damage was further uncovered, we came to the board, we told you what was happening, shared those reports, shared the data that we were seeing. And that's where the strain gauges came into play, and where the damage system, the support system from the exterior, we installed that to support that wall. At that time, this board asked if they should replace one wall at a time on the auditorium. If it should, you're replacing the south wall, should we go ahead and replace one wall at a time all the way around, rather than starting from scratch? At that point, it was decided, because of cost, that it was more costly to replace one wall at a time. Because as you replace those walls with materials that are meant to last 50 years or longer, we're going to have to go in and reinforce the foundations underneath. Now, on the south wall, that was a different instance, and we were able to support from below. On the west wall, that's not possible. We'd have to dig down, reinforce those foundations in order to put in a structural masonry wall that's reinforced. The board decided not to do that and save cost, do a less invasive solution for that west wall, which is stud and structural steel. Now, will that wall last for a while? Absolutely it will. It has structural steel behind it. It's built with steel studs, but the amount of deflection and wind speed that hits that wall on a daily basis, over time, it will continue to push on it in a different manner than if it was made from CMU block, which is a longer time period of material that will last. The north wall is
And
still—
Sandy, I just interrupt real quick here, just to also remind it that we used insurance money to pay for the rebuilding of that wall.
That's correct.
Let's go to the north wall in just a second here. I went back and looked at the minutes, and the minutes properly reflect that my concern and Alonzo's concern was, why are we repairing this wall? The buildings, let's just do a new building. And when I voted no on repairing the wall, because I wasn't certain we were going to get the insurance money. But I got it. Then I got an engineer's letter that basically said, don't worry about it. This wall, this is a good wall. This is the way to remedy the prior architectural work. This guy named Walter P. Moore wrote the letter and said, the work that you're going to do is prudent. In any event, the board voted to finish that wall. But I don't think we ever voted to finish the wall with the anticipation that the need was really a new building, that wall could go as long as 10 years. And I'm seeing in some of the documentation that you provided that the building, we would not need a building until 2027. That's when we open the door. So what I'm trying to establish here is that there's a difference between a want and a need. And somehow we went from, we needed to fix that wall to we want a $16 million a piece of architecture. And I'd love to have that. But I think this is where the board needs some quiet deliberation in the want versus need. There may be other issues, other things that we need to consider in spending our money that might be just as important as this building. And I love your design. I saw it. It'd be superb. And I'm not being critical of you at all, but I think the board, we need to take a few steps back and say, well, once we get our debt paid off, is this really the highest and best use for the next borrowing? And so I wanted you to have, I know you're certainly articulating, some of the views of the board, but there are other views that are at least as cautious about whether this is a want or a need that probably need to be articulated. And I wanted to share those with you. And what I'm hearing you say is that the timeline of 5 to 10 years is not an unreasonable timeline, if indeed that we have other needs that might be superior to this one. But 5 to 10 years that's a reasonable number. Now, did I say that right? Would you agree with that?
Yes. And so I want to back up just a second. I agree. You should have concern over any project that is at that price level. Now, during this entire process, we've brought to this board the options on moving forward. And when it comes down to cost, what you're going to pay in the short term versus what you're going to pay in the long term, that's one of the reasons that we are in the situation that we are in right now. The board decided not to spend extra funds on a wall that they may end up having to rip down anyway and rebuild an auditorium. The idea was build something that would last 3 to 5 years until another decision could be made on what that new expansion could be. We've done the reviews, we've done the research. That existing auditorium was not built correctly to match the drawings, which is why the walls have failed to this point. Now, right now, the north wall is being monitored. It's not moving, but it was not built correctly. And the west wall was put back in with a different types of construction, which is not, it's not going to last as long as you think. Now, when we decided to do that wall out of stud rather than masonry, you're correct. The board did not know if insurance was going to pay for it at the time, so they were being cautious and spending less money up front rather than more. So we're not trying to put any anxiety on you about replacing this auditorium, but the truth of the matter is that it was not constructed correctly, and it has been failing over time. So something at some point would need to be done.
Well, I've got Mr. Moore's letter here, and Mr. Moore said that the construction of that wall was done in accordance with the code at the time, and that the wall was built so that it could move in an elastic fashion, and the elasticity over 50 years went out. And that's what Mr. Moore said. And what we asked your firm to do was to come in and say, oh, can we buttress this wall? And you did that. And what we're now trying to understand is, are you in agreement that we have 5 to 10 years of capacity to use this building without feeling threatened of the safety of the building? Mr. Moore didn't feel that way. I don't think you felt that way at the time. Have you changed your mind? And if so, tell me why.
No, we have not changed our mind.
Okay.
So
that's what I'm trying to ask. Okay.
Justin, did you want to say
let me add. Okay, Justin, go ahead first.
Yeah, Mr. Tody, I would like to clarify. So we did a structural repair to the best of our ability. It is very important that everybody completely understands that the repairs that were done by code should only last 5 years. They may last longer than that, but by law, by code, those repairs that we did to the current auditorium are only allowed to last 5 years. So as soon as we finished those repairs, that kind of started a ticking clock to say that, something would need to be done relatively soon after that 5-year period. So I think that's the most important thing to kind of expand on here is the fact that we are limited by the code on how long those repairs are viable.
And we also chose those repairs because of potential costs and trying to save money, knowing that we would be doing something different in the future.
That is correct. Because if we would have gone to more of the permanent repair where we replaced the walls with masonry and other, like Sandy said, 50-year materials, we would have had to reinforce the footings first before we did that. And that exponentially would increase the cost.
Right.
So we brought those options to you guys as the board. And it was just decided to go a little bit different way until we could make a permanent decision on how we wanted to fix the auditorium. And I think that there was an agreement to do the additions and the renovations more so than just the repairs on the walls of the auditorium itself.
I think, and that's kind of what I was going to allude to as far as my recollection, and see if other board members recall, because we had talked about going all the way around and fixing all three of those walls. And we talked about a probable cost of around $10 million. And if we did that, we would still end up with an auditorium that is obsolete, that we had scheduled to spend $1.5 million on to bring up to standards that would match what we've already done at Raytown High. So we're talking about 11.5 million on an obsolete building. That's why the board said, let's look at this. We're not voting on spending this money tonight. We're still a couple of years out. So it's not like we're rushing into anything. We're planning ahead. And that's how I recall that we got moving down this road.
Mr. Moore, you're absolutely correct, 100%. We did do that review, and that is why this board decided to go ahead and build a new space rather than renovate an existing space that didn't meet the program requirements for your theater department right now, and to be on par with modern designs of auditoriums and performing arts centers.
Wait a minute. I want to make sure I understand what you just said, Sandy. You think that the board decided to build this auditorium? Is that what that was your
Sir,
understanding?
they have not voted on that yet.
Okay, I want to make certain that because I don't see that in the minutes, but I think we're in agreement on that.
No,
We're in
but
agreement.
the board did approve for Hollis and Miller to work on design documents for them to review and possibly consider to release for bid. Yes.
I think the board needs to ratify what we did because we don't have it in the minutes. I would vote to ratify what you've done, because I think you've probably done a fantastic job. I think we need to document that ratification.
Hey,
We don't, it's not in the minutes.
Sandy, just for clarification, we did talk to the fire department, right?
Yes, we did. And yes. It's fully sprinkled.
Thank you, Sandy.
Well, isn't that also part of the future planning when you go into working on bond levies and what have you? You get committees, you get citizens, you get teachers, you get administrators, you get staff. Mr. Cody, and part of that is to make that decision is, do we want to go ahead with this auditorium and auxiliary gym, or is there something else that we could spend some of this money on and not be quite as elaborate or whatever we're recommending? So, but that's future down the road, something we haven't voted on right yet, but will vote on at some time once we decide we're going to go for a bond levy and what we want included with that, and then we get the patrons to support that and work on it then.
Sandy, I have a question. So your design that you just showed us a few minutes ago, we asked you to go forward to do that design?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so what was our reason for asking, refresh my memory, what was our reason for asking you to go forward on this if we're talking about moving on this in a couple of years or maybe 3 years?
Yes, so the idea behind us going ahead and moving forward with design is that since the uncertainty of the other walls surrounding the auditorium in case there was another failure, was that this design would be ready to go. You could release it for bid for a contractor within a week or two from when it was when other damage was found. And so that was the idea, so that you didn't have to wait for us to have meetings with staff, create designs, and get drawings ready. It's ready to go right now.
I thank you very much. I appreciate that, because I was wondering myself, where are we going with the statements here? Okay.
Sandy, the north wall is not moving, right?
It is not. It currently has strain gauges on it. We have an engineer come out monthly and review it. And there's been no significant movement at this time.
And we're okay with the west wall and all that?
Yes.
Okay.
Any more questions for Sandy?
We got lost in the as far as the cost of the design but yeah.
All right, it's good information. Thank you, Sandy.
Sure.
Dr. Shelton, I know you're sitting back there behind me. Just want to give a quick glimpse of what it might look like bond issue wise.
I do. Thank you. And I'll address your question, Mr. Burton. First of all, I just want to explain, when we receive an invoice from Hollis and Miller, it has a total amount, but in that total amount, it's broken down into the fees that are paid to Hollis and Miller. And those fees are for architecture, interior design, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, consultants, structural, graphic design, those sorts of services that are performed by Hollis and Miller. Additionally, there are reimbursable fees that are in that invoice. And those are special inspections, civil engineering, surveys, boring, and you can see the list of other reimbursable type services that Hollis and Miller will, I'll say, conduct and contract on our behalf with the third-party vendor. And then also a question came about in regards to the fee structure that we use and under contract with Hollis and Miller to pay them. And so it's a percentage fee based on the size of the project. So if the project is 0 to 200,000, the fee percentage is 8.45%. And you can see those percentages all the way down to a $15 million or more project, which is 5.75%. That's the percentage fee that we paid on this particular project. So, Mr. Burton, what we paid Hollis and Miller to date for the design of this project is $854,371.79. Of that, $674,177.50 went to Hollis and Miller for their services, and $180,194.29 went to reimbursables, which would be those third-party vendors and other items that were listed on that reimbursable list. So in anticipation, if and when we as a district decide that we want to move forward with this project, these costs have already been incurred. They will not be incurred again. And so these are costs that we've paid and we will not pay again as we move forward. Mr. Tody had asked for some additional information in regards to Hollis and Miller and what we had paid them over time. In FY19, we had paid them for a total of $805,637.66, and you can see the breakdown of what of that amount went toward Hollis and Miller and their fees, and then what went toward reimbursables. In FY20, that dollar amount was $1.8 million, $1.9 million, and then to date in FY21, that dollar amount is $817,000, and you can see the breakdown. Any questions regarding?
Yeah, Dr. Shelton.
Yes, sir.
So help answer my question. We have it in the minutes, but we don't have. But the board didn't agree to a contract. Help me. We've incurred these expenses. We paid these bills. What is the documentation that we have that the board approved these expenditures?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Tody. And so I have viewed this as an extension of our bond projects. This is a project, as Mr. Moore had indicated, as we went into the projects of updating the South High Auditorium. We had budgeted $1.5 million. Along the way, we've got into the issues of the walls at the auditorium, and knowing that this would be we could never fund this project with general revenue, if you will, or general capital funds. That I viewed this as an extension of the bond projects that we're working on, And so I looked at it through that lens.
So you think that the bond ordinance applies to 1.9 million of architectural and other fees related to something that's not in the bond offering agreement?
I think I'm trying to understand your question, Mr. Toady. You're asking is how did we come to use Hollis and Miller for this work, maybe potentially without bidding that out? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I don't see that. I don't know that we needed to bid it. I don't know that we have ever, that the board's ever approved it. I mean, I understand that we had a bond issue. We said we were going to put 1.6 million in this building. We had a problem with the building, so we didn't spend the money. But I don't know that the taxpayer or that this board ever authorized these kind of numbers, or was ever aware that we were spending these kind of numbers.
Well, it's similar to what the work we did with all their work on the ventilation study. We did not pass any specific approval for those numbers either. We hired Hollis and Miller, and they designed work for us all the time. And just like we didn't approve expenditures specifically for the ventilation study, we didn't approve the specific expenditures for this because they are on retainer with us as our architects.
Well, I don't know if I agree with your analogy, but I would have suspected that an expenditure of 1.9 million would have been brought to the attention of this board. I mean, what fund did we spend this money?
These are capital improvement projects, and all capital improvement projects run through Fund 4.
Was that fund, were these projects funded with the bond issue?
This design work has been completed with bond money. Yes.
I'm trying to split hairs here, but the bond issue that was approved, did it have monies allocated for design fees on the South High Auditorium?
Well, first and foremost, it had funds set aside for design improvements of the auditorium at South High. It did. Additionally, the bond language also goes on to state other capital improvements and maintenance of the district.
Well, okay. I don't see it like you're seeing. I don't think we had the approval on these expenditures, but I think we should get that. I mean, we paid them, but I think we ought, as a matter of documenting what we did, we should have some board approval here.
We're going to have Rachel take a closer look at the minutes and back at that time. And perhaps I think were we recording our board meetings at that time? I can't remember.
You were, Dr. Markley. I did go back and look a while ago, and forgive me because I can't remember what month it was. It was either October or November, but the board did approve us to move forward with documentation of these expansions. We were all in person at that time. So it was prior to COVID. It was in the fall of 2019 when that happened.
Now,
and I agree, Sandy. It was in October when we had the meeting, but the November minutes do not identify any estimates, and there was nothing in that indicated that we approved anything that we approved the design, or particularly that we approved these kinds of monies. Nothing. And I've got it right in front of me here, so it's public if you want to have a copy of it. By the way, I can't see anybody's face. Somebody out there.
I remember. I remember approving moving forward with the design. I don't think we were specific on the number because you guys are already on retainer.
And the way our contract operates, Mr. Toady, is we create estimates on projects for the district, and based on those estimates, a certain percentage of estimated construction costs is what we base our fee on. And that is part of our contract with the school district. So depending on that cost, there's a range, and each percentage varies depending on what that range is. So it's specified as part of our ongoing contract, and that is for all construction projects for the district.
Yeah, and that's fine. I'm not going to be late, but if it's in the November minutes, that's great. If it's not, then I think the board needs to put something in writing that we've posthumously approved these fees because it's not in the November minutes. And so if I missed it, then fine, show me.
To move on to the next topic, been asked to share the current expected revenue or the fund balances in our bond projects, as well as possible scenarios for obtaining other bond funds for this project. So Rachel, if you would you mind sharing, if you don't, sharing the agenda item so I can tell you which document to open? Melissa or Rachel, would you open up the bottom agenda attachment, please? Okay. And would you make that a little larger for me? All right, thank you. So based on our past spending of the 2019 bond funds and projected spending moving forward, we estimate and anticipate ending our current bond projects with $4 million of unspent bond proceeds. So we would begin, if you will, with $4 million that we currently have in our current bond funds. Okay, if you can close that attachment and open up the attachment above. If you would make that a little larger. And then if you would mind scrolling down. Keep on going. And if you would stop on that page, if you would scroll back up, just keep scrolling up. And if you would stop there. Okay, so if you will look at the highlighted section in 2023, so in April of 2023, we could go to the voters and request $20 million in bond proceeds. That would give us $24 million to spend on the South High Auditorium and the South High Auxiliary Gym. One thing I know about this board and one thing I know about this community, at some point someone's going to ask, what are we going to do at Ray High? And that would provide us some funds if we wanted to build an auxiliary gym at Raytown High as well. Not necessarily, but those funds would be available. Then if you go down to 2028, we could go back out to the voters again, looking at future bond projects and obtain $55 million. And then in 2033, go out and obtain just under $44 million for future bond projects. If you recall, we have completed a facility needs assessment, and we have significant needs in regards to our facilities, whether they be regular maintenance of our facilities or maybe improvements and additions that we want to make. So I would just offer up the opportunity to ask any questions. If we followed this program or this timeline, if we went to the voters in the spring of 23 and obtained their approval, we could break ground in the auditorium in the spring of 23 and then open it in, correct me if I'm wrong, Sandy, the fall of 25.
Steve, you made a point that I think is, I don't want to overlook. You made the point that we have significant needs for improvements of our facilities. And you gave me a number the other day, 50, 60 million, whatever. I don't know what it, but it's a big number. Would it be worthwhile if you pulled out that schedule and provided it to the board? I mean, I don't know what's on that schedule, but
sure,
60 millions, 50 millions, not chump change. We ought to understand that.
I'd be more than happy to provide that. Yes.
Can we
And
do it
once
the
ag-
next meeting?
Yes. Yes, sir. And as Dr. Marcus said, we're not asking for any decision tonight. This is information to help guide future decisions, and that would
Right.
be important information to guide future decisions as well.
Right, right.
You said the fall of 25, not 24. If you said start in spring of 23.
You know, and as we talked about, you know, we're going to start with the auditorium first. And that entire project, both Performing Arts Center and Gymnasium, is going to take around 18 months, 15 to 18 months. So that does start to get into that fall of 25. It probably prior to that with the auditorium, obviously. So I don't know. We possibly could. We could open up in the fall of 2024 with that auditorium.
I think his fall of 24 would be what? That would be 13 to 15 months from.
Yes.
Okay, not the fall of 25. That'd be 2 years.
Correct. I'm sorry. Yes.
Oh, okay. And I know you're just using.
Yes.
Yeah.
More questions for Steve? Thank you, Sandy.
Thank you.
Right. Move on to the graduation 2021 update quickly. Dr. Mixon, are you out there? We didn't have you last time.
Yes, I am here.
Okay.
Just wanted to remind everybody that graduation is May 16th at Starlight again, and we are looking forward to seeing everyone there. We have our Raytown High graduation at 1 o'clock this time, and South High is at 10. And similar, you know, type of presentation like we did last time. The South High kids will go first. They'll line up at the back, march down, and then we'll hand out the diplomas at that time. They have 2 different times for their graduation ticket distribution on May 12th and May 14th. And at this time, each graduate will be getting 4 tickets again. We are working with Starlight to see where we are with their capacity and social distancing limitations and masking them and that sort of thing. So we will continue to work with Starlight, and if we are able to give our graduates more tickets, then we will try to do that. Questions about graduation?
You said May 16th?
May 16th.
For both?
Yes.
There is an attachment on that item that gives the time. Raytown South will start at 10, Raytown High at 1 o'clock. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Mixon.
Thank you.
We've got FEV Tutor. Does anybody have any questions on that? I know you've probably read the information, and Dr. Huff may want to, he's here that he can answer anything, but it is the online or one-to-one virtual intervention platform tutoring program that we have for our kids that we started. And you can see there's just a quick update. It seems to be going well and a good program for our kids. Just one more layer of protection to help our students during this time. So any questions on that? Okay. And finally, item 6.11, social emotional support. Ms. Salisbury asked me if I would ask Dr. Cordell to come to the board meeting and kind of give a quick update on what we are doing to try and reach out and grab some of these students that are having difficulty, not only academically, but socially and emotionally during these times. And he was certainly willing to do so. And there might be some questions, and Ms. Salisbury might have some questions as well. So Dr. Cordell, are you out there?
Yes, Dr. Markley, can you hear me, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll just give just a minute or so, just extemporaneous overview. So when we think of social emotional learning, one of the obviously the key components for education and learning is relationship driven. And when students are at school, the focus is on relationships. And when the students are not at school, that creates additional challenges and layers of challenges for the adults working with the students. When we focus on social emotional needs, when the students are not at school, counselors and social workers spent an extensive amount of time during this past year really focusing on student and family needs, such as loss of employment, loss of financial hardship for families, food insecurities, food at the house, displaced families, families that are living with other families, loss of a family or a loved one, stress of the COVID pandemic, stress with online learning, the online learning platforms. That could be both for students having stress and the parents having stress with how to assist their student with online various learning platforms. Students having stress about grades, the balance between work and school, and then also younger siblings, helping families, maybe younger siblings at the house with their learning as well. We've experienced that quite a bit. So during, for example, last spring semester, counselors and social workers would spend an exuberant amount of time with phone calls, Zoom meetings, emails, and personal visits to families that they have to regain that personal connection. And the challenge would be for some buildings, maybe new incoming ninth graders and new incoming sixth graders that the adults are not familiar with. You want to build that relationship with that student and that family. So social workers and counselors would go out of their way to create opportunities to connect with family, build relationships, and with time, consistency, and follow through, be able to establish that relationship. One of the things that they often worked on was referring families to outside agencies for mental health needs, referring families for therapy or counseling, in communication with Children's Division. And often we would, social workers and counselors would help with families in need of course, utilities, rent assistance, internet access, and then just in general, big scope, a disconnect between not having seen their peers every day, a disconnect to not physically being at school and interacting with the teachers every day, feelings of isolation, depression, anxiety, conflicts at the house, potentially, abuse, neglect. And I'd mentioned earlier, some older students caring for younger students of their family. All of these experiences can be stressful, can be overwhelming, and create challenges. Social workers and counselors, and as well as the principals and assistant principals and teachers, worked long during lunches, worked after school, worked a lot of weekends. You could email a counselor or a social worker late at night or on a weekend. Chances are they're going to email you back because they're working long, excessively long hours. So right now it feels as though social workers and counselors are at their capacity because the essence of their work is time. It takes a lot of time. So a simple phone call to a family just to check in, and you think it could be just a few minute phone call, could end up being a half hour or more on the phone when you direct them to an agency, when you assist them with how to get support in a various manner. So just the manner of their work is very, very it takes a lot of time. So when you think of social workers and counselors, they're just key resources to buildings. They're dedicated professionals to the students they serve, to the families that they serve, and to the staff at each of their buildings. So when we are thinking of next year and how to better serve and how to enhance or how can we better support students and families, we are adding a fourth counselor back to Raytown High School for next year, just due to the overwhelming number of student numbers with the caseloads of the 3 current guidance counselors. We're going to add a fourth guidance counselor. We're working on a grant for 2 additional social workers, more than likely at the elementary level, that would begin in the fall semester, hopefully. We're also working with an MOU with a local partnership to add a social worker, not sure, probably middle or elementary level. Again, not all buildings have a social worker. We did receive a federal grant last fall that will begin for us to have 3 additional behavior interventionists, 1 for Ray High, 1 for Ray South, and a bus transportation behavior interventionist. We're continuing to enhance our partnerships with local agencies such as CAPA, Child Abuse Prevention Association, Rediscover, and Preferred Family Healthcare. All of those focus on trauma-informed care, abuse, neglect, mental wellness. And also we're expanding our partnership with St. Luke's Trauma Smart Training to further enhance our elementary schools with Trauma Smart training and awareness for all staff. And then also next fall, or in the summer before next fall would begin, We're going to conduct some SOS, signs of suicide training at both high schools, and that would be for teachers and support staff as well. And then just one final note and planning for next year. We're looking into a software case management system, so we are better able to track our work and our interventions and our time with supporting students and families.
Thank you for that. I appreciate your report. I have a couple of questions here. You said you're going to have the suicide training. Is that going to be mandatory for you to all teachers? Or?
Yes. So for signs of suicide training, we're going to focus predominantly on Raytown High and Raytown South High School, and that would be for all teachers. And actually, we are planning for support staff as well. And there is a possibility that we would do some perhaps training for bus drivers as well, just for their awareness and use of information, so they are better able to observe and then report that to the building that they most work with.
That's mandatory.
Yes, ma'am. That will be mandatory training. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. That's good. And then you've answered some. I had a few questions. You've answered them, but I'm just going to probably repeat myself. So hope you don't mind. You did say that you're bringing on an additional staff. Is that right?
Yes, a fourth guidance counselor at Raytown High School.
And
yes,
also
ma'am.
about social workers. So will you be, are you trying to reach out for 2 more social workers or what?
Yes, we have a grant that we're working on, Healthy Forward grant that is due in just a couple of days. That grant is designed for 2 social workers at the elementary level. If we would receive the grant, we would not be notified of the grant until just after Labor Day in September of this fall, ma'am.
Okay. So I was listening to what you were saying, but sometimes my retaining will lead me faster than what you can say. So I'm going to ask this question. Do we have a plan, like some type of a continual process that we go through to look for students who are expressing some forms of mental inabilities, or like depression, or just having some struggles mentally? Do we have anything in place where we're acutely aware of this?
Yes, typically, for example, at the middle school level, we would use a social emotional curriculum, second steps curriculum. They would use an advisory class. Also, middle and high school, we would use the signs of suicide, and that is an all-encompassing overview that adults can pick up on key signs, keywords, or behavior, or a change in a student behavior, or some kind of change in their demeanor that would lead the adult to make an office referral, refer to the assistant principal or counselor or social worker, and then that social worker, counselor, or assistant principal would follow up with that student and family as needed.
Okay, and so on those kids that we have noticed have these issues, do we have a follow-up with them?
Yes, and then from there, once a counselor or social worker, let's just say a student is referred to a guidance counselor for self-harm of some sort. So then at that point, the guidance counselor is typically always following up with that student. Those conversations or those interactions could be weekly, or then after a certain period of time, they could be a couple times a month. But once you've had that conversation as an adult with that student, you always want to continue to check in, even if it's just once a month or even just a brief hallway conversation. Once that thought comes to an adult mind, a counselor or social worker's mind, they're always going to want to focus and continue to follow up with the student's mental well-being.
Okay,
Yes,
now I know that the district is going to be getting some care money. I know you're waiting on this grant, and it won't be probably approved until September. So in the sense of preparation and being prepared for the school year, can some of the care money be used to hire social workers?
I would defer to Dr. Huff or Dr. Shelton, but I would strongly be an advocate for social workers to do the work of working with families in need and students in crisis. and or make sure we have appropriate caseload assignments for guidance counselors as well. The adults, such as guidance counselors and social workers, can at times be overwhelmed with their work, with their dedication to serve students. So if we are better able to have the appropriate staffing for that need, that would be very helpful. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I would just encourage the district to really consider. I don't like the fact that these very serious things we postpone, and the other things that are just mechanical things or non-human things, I should say, we can easily move into those things, but the human thing, we kind of drag our feet on. And I would just like to encourage the district to use some of that care money for us hiring social workers so that we are covering our kids, because it would be a bad thing for our kids that are attending the district and showing emotional distresses, and those kids fall through the crack. So that's a real concern of mine. And I hope the district is hearing me, and that we will give great consideration to using some of that care money for that.
We hear you, Ms. Salisbury.
Thank you.
You mentioned the word, you mentioned at capacity. I mean, are we truly at capacity? Are we over capacity? And with the hiring, the potential hiring of new social workers and counselors, do you anticipate that being enough to maintain?
I would think we would need to do a little more review and analysis, but on a quick response, I would say that, and just to follow what Ms. Salisbury had mentioned earlier, the work of guidance counselors and social workers, you want their work to be proactive. You don't want their work to be reactive, because then you've missed something, you're late. And the work of social workers or guidance counselors, they're always worried about, did I reach every student today? Did I follow up with every student that needed to see me? If someone made a referral to see me, was I able to visit with them and have great follow-up? So you always want the work of essential staff like that to be proactive. I believe adding a fourth guidance counselor to Raytown High School is going to be absolutely a great thing for students of Ray High, and for the 4 guidance counselors that will be there next year. And you always want to have an equivalent to their caseload. Another fact would be social workers. We do not have a social worker at every building. If we were able to add a social worker as needed, that would be very beneficial, Mr. Burton.
Okay. I had a question, like, so when kids are identified that needing a social worker or a counselor or needing some type of help, are they coming to you mostly? Are you going to them?
Yes, sir. It's all done at the building level. And for example, just each building would have their own team, whether that's the principal, assistant principals, guidance counselor, social worker, behavior interventionist, and they would have an internal referral system. And then that referral system would be able to be viewed by that team so that there's adequate follow through, that the student was met with, adequate communication with the family so that any concerns are communicated with the family. And that is all provided with direct oversight from each building principal.
And then I kind of got a question. I don't know if you'll be able to answer, but do you see any correlation between students who receive OSS and ISS with the numbers? Are those the same students we're talking about that would be needing social workers and having the most social and emotional stress?
In general, the past year with our worldwide pandemic, I would say it could be any family that would need the help of a social worker or guidance counselor. And typically, for example, this past year, it's not related to any kind of school discipline. It is outside stressors, in essence, food, clothing, and shelter, and other basic needs being met. More often than not, if those basic needs are not being met, then they're not academically in a good place for school or learning.
Okay.
All right, any more questions for Dr. Cordell? Thank you, Dr. Cordell. I always say your best trade is your love for the St. Louis Cardinals, like mine. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Dr. Markley.
Yeah.
At the end of your report, that last comment was unnecessary.
I yield my time, Mr. President.
I had a question for him. In regards to the OSS and ISS, one of I got two questions. On one of the documents, I need clarification again as to it had, I think it's the incidents at each building. It'll say OSS 1, OSS 2, OSS 3, goes up to all the way up to however many. And then like for OSS 7 for Spring Valley, it has 1. And it also says that they had 7 occurrences. So that's one student being okay. Yeah, I don't have it with me.
This one right here.
Yeah.
I think it's this one here.
I think I don't have it up on with me. I'm sorry.
That one is the April 2021 total number of student incidents by building report. I think, is that the one you're referring to?
Yeah.
And
By building per month report?
Yeah, I think
it's by action. It's got ISS and OSS. It's by action.
Spring Valley has a number 1 under the OSS 7.
Okay, I'm getting there.
I think that may be referring to 7 children got 1 day.
Right.
Right?
That's
Yeah.
a total number of incidents. And so you're asking about Spring Valley. I've got it now in front of me. Spring Valley, which one now? I see Spring Valley has ISS 1. There's 3 students that have received 1 day of ISS.
Oh.
And then they're down in OSS.
He's looking at OSS.
Oh, you're looking at OSS. So 1 student received 7 days of
Know what that
OSS.
is?
Yeah.
So that's 7 days and not 7 occurrences. 7 different suspensions.
Hang on a second now. Typically, we put that down in the notes. The data shows the total number of unique students with total number of ISS incident in that day. So, right, you've got 1 student that has had 7 incidents of ISS. That's exactly right.
Okay.
OSS.
Yeah, of OSS. Yes.
And so this is for the month of April. Now
This
that's
is
just
through March.
Through March.
Right.
This one is specifically in the month of April. Yes, this report.
But it's cumulative through March. So.
Okay. And that the reason why I asked Dr. Cordell if there was a correlation, I mean, I know we're looking at numbers and, you know, we can't get into specifics in this meeting, but someone in that situation might need a call, or someone in that,
no
I
doubt.
don't know what we're doing for those students.
Mhm.
And, you know, it's just, I would imagine that these are the same students that we're talking about with some of those distresses that the reason before.
Mr. Burton, if you don't mind, what I'll do is I'll ask Robert to check on that single student to maybe get, without a name, he can give us an idea about what interventions we've put in place for that single student. And you're right, we do keep track of students who have an unusually high number of incidents because it does typically reflect something else going on in their life. And we do step up the amount of interventions, you know, so we go through a tiered system. Most students are a tier 1 where they just kind of a general student. The students who are getting multiple, like this student that has 7 OSSs, is most likely a tier 3 student who's receiving a lot of interventions to try to curb that behavior. But I'll ask Mr. Cordell, and actually Mr. Cordell may still be listening here, if he would check on this 1 student at Spring Valley that has 7 incidents of OSS.
Yes, I can do that, Dr. Huff.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cordell.
And I know I've asked this
Dr.
question
Cordell.
before, but what does OSS look like in today's environment? I mean, how does that student continue to get educated?
So it depends on the individual incident and the individual student and the grade level of the student and all of this. But I will say this, that it is easier now to keep a student's education process moving now that we have the online tools that we have. So as much as possible, we try to keep that student's educational process moving. So that might mean that the student is doing asynchronous work, continuing on with the class and just doing asynchronous work while they're on OSS. If it's an extended period, we may shift delivery platforms for that student, but our goal is at all times to keep that student's educational process moving forward. Our general philosophy is that there is no value in removing the education from a student for an OSS. They don't learn anything by removing the educational process for them. All that does is walk them one step closer towards being a dropout. So we want to keep that educational process moving. We think what we do is that important. And we do have more tools now than we used to.
Well, and I would say, along with Bobby's recommendation earlier with Dr. Cordell, that I know we mentioned something about not being able to use virtual learning once all this is over to the extent that we have, but we certainly can use that as a tool and something that we can do to educate children that are having struggles in regards to discipline.
Many of the tools we have in place will be one of the beautiful things. There is sometimes beauty that comes out of tragedy. One of the beauties of this tragedy is that we have, in essence, given a crash course PD to all of our teachers in being virtual teachers. And there is no way, I cannot fathom a circumstance where we would have been able to get all of our teachers trained to the extent that they are now in being virtual teachers. They are all experts. And so it does put us in a place where we're better able to deliver that kind of education in the virtual setting, even for a short period of time. That doesn't mean we have synchronous opportunities for those students, but we can certainly do asynchronous opportunities.
All right, that's all my questions.
I'm glad to hear that, Dr. Duff. I mean, I really am. It is a good thing, and I like what you're saying in reference to the philosophy, because it is a critical time in our nation, a critical time in our world, and we need to do everything we can to educate our kids so that we don't create our future in a way that is detrimental to all of us. So I appreciate your saying those words, and I'm looking forward to seeing the fruit of those words.
As am I.
Thank you, Dr. Cordell and Dr. Huff. Dr. Markley, anything else? All right. Thank you very much. All right, bring in Danielle Nixon now. Ms. Nixon's going to share with us, did you know?
Good evening. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, good. The district recently received a National Music Award. The Raytown School District received the Best Communities for Music Education designation from the National Association of Music Merchants. The district's one of only 686 districts nationwide, one of 6 in the state of Missouri, and one of 2 districts in the Kansas City metro area to receive this designation. The national designation is awarded to districts who demonstrate outstanding achievement in efforts to provide music access and education to all students. So I want to take time to recognize all of our music programs and our teachers and students and volunteers who make our programs wonderful and made it for us to be able to receive this national award. We have summer school enrollment, which is now open, and it closes on May 7th. Summer school this year will run June 2nd to June 29th, and it's open to all students who are entering kindergarten through 12th grade for the fall of 2021. Elementary and middle school classes will be held in person, and high school classes will be available both in person and virtually for summer school this year. We have another in a series of combat food distributions in connection with harvesters and other district and community volunteers. That one's going to take place this Saturday, April 17th from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Going back to related to our music program, we have a Raytown High School student named Joshua McCarroll who was selected for the Missouri All-State Choir. He is one of only 8 basses and one of only 32 singers to be selected for from the Kansas City Metro for the All-State Choir. And those auditions took place virtually this year. And then last up on Did You Know, you have some photos from Great Expectations their spring break program, which was pretty awesome. They had a fun-filled week of hands-on science camp experiments involving candy and just other tools and everything. They had a really awesome time, and it ended with a pretty cool skate party. So that was really great for our Great Expectations students. And that's all I have on Did You Know today.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dixon. Anybody have any questions or comments for Danielle? All right, thank you. Good job. All right, I think we're back to Dr. Shelton with Finance Committee report.
Yes, thank you. Rachel or Melissa, may I take the screen? So in February, I asked the Finance Committee and the board to give me some feedback and give me some guidance regarding the FY22 budget. And the Finance Committee gave me 5 areas initially that they felt were priorities, and I placed those in a rating scale and asked the entire board to provide feedback as to what they saw as their top choice and their second choice and on down to their 5th choice. One of the topics that we discussed, which is in the blue, was increased pay by adding money to the base. As we get to the compensation of staff, sometimes we provide a step, and sometimes we add money to the base, and sometimes we do both. In this case, the question was, how important, where did you rank, if you will, the increased pay by adding money to the base? 2 of the board members had that as their first choice, 4 of the board members had that as their second choice, and 1 of the board members had it as the third choice. The other area regarding compensation was increasing pay by giving staff a step, and 3 board members had that as their first choice, 1 board member had it as their second choice, 1 board member has their third choice, and 2 board members had it as their 5th choice. Maintaining benefits was another category, another topic. 2 board members had that as their first choice, 1 had it as the second, 3 had it as their third, and 1 had it as their fourth. Fund the recovery plan. Dr. Huff presented the recovery plan earlier tonight. 5 board members had it as their fourth choice, 2 had it as their 5th choice, and then continued the development of virtual instruction. And we just spoke about virtual instruction in regards to students who are at risk. And 1 board member had it as their second choice, 2 had it as their third, 1 has their fourth, and 3 had it as their 5th. The other part of the survey went on and asked a question: what other priorities do you have for the FY22 budget? I had 6 responses. 1 was teacher retention. 1 was that funding the recovery plan include allocation of smaller class sizes, continue to working with rating, enhance student achievement, maintain status quo but try to move forward with enrollment retention efforts and keep South High Auditorium on the priority list, establishing virtual school for out of school suspension, which we just spoke about. The next question was, in current expenditures, if we must be reduced, to balance our budget, if we have to reduce expenditures, how do we go about doing that? 1 board member said, not sure. Another board member said everything on the table except certified pay. This is something that needs to be prioritized by administration, presented to the board, to us. Freeze administrators, compensation for the top 20, reduction of staff, reduction of purchase materials, possible reduction of travel. Let's examine the board goals of 15% reserves before making cuts, and the amount spent on building interior and exterior. One of the questions toward the end was, should we go back to the voters at some point, if needed, and ask the voters to move some of our debt service levy into operating levy, which we did in 2019, and all 7 board members thought that would be something feasible and maybe responsible to do. Then the last question was, should we go to the voters and ask for a levy increase, actually increase taxes? And if needed, once again, if needed, 7 board of the 7 responses, I believe 5 board members said yes, and 2 said no. And then there were just some closing comments as well. And so as I'm going to close my screen here. As we think about the fiscal year 22 budget, there are 4 steps in that process, 4 phases of development. One is the budget request phase, and we've started that, and we've done that actually. And we've gone to our administrators throughout the district and said, what do you need to be successful in your programs? What do your students need? What do your staff members need? And what resources do you need to help them be successful? They provided us that feedback. That's the budget requested stage. Then we go into the budget the next step of the budget, which is where Jackie and I go through and we start having conversations with each administrator to really get down to the needs and the wants. Mr. Tody, you mentioned, there are needs and there are wants, and we have to delineate what those needs and wants are and decide what do we need, what can we fund, and then of the wants, what can we do? And so that's the phase that we're in right now, but we are preparing to move into the budget approved phase. And that will be presented to you in the form of the preliminary budget in May. I'm going to take your feedback through this survey and any feedback you give me tonight and develop that preliminary budget that I'm going to present to you in May. And that preliminary budget will have all the components of the budget. It'll have the budget message, it'll have the budget summary, it'll have the revenue by object, it'll have the expenses by function and object. And it'll be a full preliminary budget. So first I want to say thank you for taking the time to complete that survey, but I also want to give you the opportunity to give me any other feedback or discuss what the other board members provided in the survey. Well, not hearing any comments, I will take the survey at its word and that those are your priorities. And we will build this budget based on the priorities that you have given me through this survey, as well as the feedback from staff and our administrators as we move forward.
See, the only thing that I would ask you to think about in light of the conversation on professional fees, somehow we need a little more daylight on professional fees, because professional fees, if they don't go through the operating fund, if they go through the bond projects fund, I mean, we may not be able to get any daylight on that. The same thing's true with legal fees, all the above. I'd like to be able to know of those discretionary professional fees, what are they going to be and what's the controls and how often are you going to show that to us? Because anyway, if you could do that, I think that would be very helpful.
Sure. And so just so you know, from a control standpoint, we obviously have a budget set for that. And that budget limit is one of the controls. We will not exceed whatever that budgeted amount is for those fees. I will tell you, one thing we do in the finance office is 5 or 6 times a year, we look at each of our vendors and we look at what we're spending, what we've spent this year so far, what we spent last year, and make sure that's in comparison. And we do, if you recall, I have provided that to the finance committee in the past. And so there is from the administrative standpoint, a great deal of oversight of those fees and those professional fees that we incur as a district. But I will take that to heart and provide that to the board and to the finance committee in the future as well. But we do review that on a regular basis. So the next item I'd like to get into is just that where we are, where we believe we will end this year. I mentioned the budget development process, the budget for FY22 as it sits today, and moving forward. And I'm not going to go into 23 and 24 and 25 at this point, unless you would like to. But
and just in regards to the operating budget. And as you may recall, there's the operating budget, there's the debt service budget, there's the capital budget, but then there's the overall budget, which is all funds combined. But we as a district spend a lot of time focusing on the operating budget. And so in a global sense, we anticipate bringing in $1.5 million in revenue this year. This is in the blue column. If you look in the FY22 year-end trend, estimated actual is maybe another way you could describe it. We anticipate our revenues to be $1.5 million. We anticipate our expenditures for this year to be $1.6 million. That said, we believe we'll have a deficit this year of $600,000, leaving us a balance of 24 million, which is 22.6% in our operating balances. As we look at the FY22 budget, I'm anticipating $115 million in revenue, so a $10 million increase, $10.3 million increase in revenue, but also projecting an $11 million increase in expenditures. Mostly, you'll see a large increase in our payroll and benefits. Ray team is going to speak to you here in a little bit about what they are recommending to you for their increase in salaries. Also in that number is a $500,000 increase for health insurance, and Dr. Huff presented to you earlier an increase in staffing, significant increase in staffing as part of the recovery plan. And so you'll see that number, that information is reflected in that $93.7 million for payroll and benefits. Also, you can see that we're budgeting $11.9 million in purchase services and $11.9 million in supplies. If that occurs, we will end next year with a $1.9 million deficit, $22 million in balances, and an 18.8% in percent in reserves. So any questions in regards to the current state and current development of the FY22 budget? Thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Shelton. All right, Raytown Educational Foundation report. Mr.
Yes,
Landers.
Mr. President, thank you.
Thank you.
The Raytown Education Foundation held their March meeting on March 24th by Zoom, and here are some of the highlights. Share the Love Breakfast, the Foundation virtual Share the Love Breakfast, which was titled From Our Kitchen to Yours, was a success thanks to our REF sous chefs, sponsors, donors, and tasty pastries from our Herndon Culinary Institute students. The net profit for the foundation was $5,863. The class of 2021 scholarships, the foundation scholarship season remains in progress. The foundation held 2 REF Scholarships 101 workshops by Zoom to assist students with this year's electronic application process. 48 students submitted applications. Students are eligible to apply for multiple scholarships through the foundation common application. Thus, the 48 students created 280 applications. REF volunteers created view packets for 73 readers representing 23 selection committees. REF will hold a scholarship reception for recipients and donors by Zoom, and will also publish a special scholarship edition of our digital newsletter highlights and scholarships and recipients. Grant Showcase, this year's Grant Showcase will be held by Zoom on April the 28th at 6 p.m. You are welcome to join. Email Martha Cockrell at ref@raytownschools.org and she will send you a link to join this showcase. Teaching and Learning Grants 2021-2022 Applications for next year's teaching and learning grants are due May 3rd. The foundation continues to support of this program by approving a budget allotment of $15,000 for next year's grants. That's the highlights of their March meeting. Any questions? Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Landers. Again, I'm looking forward to the time we can have ribbon cutting for the Culinary Center. And if any board members have not had a chance to get over there yet, I would encourage you to go there and take a tour. It's amazing facility.
I will say that one of the celebrity chefs has had a breakfast sausage casserole that is worth getting up for. No more comments.
All right.
You can't say breakfast without sausage.
That's right.
Or bacon.
And scrambled egg.
All right, I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda, and I will try to remember to mention a donation when we're done with that one.
Mr. President.
Yes, Ms. Tittle.
I move that the board approve the April 12th, 2021 consent agenda as presented. Second.
Is there a second? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed, say no. Consent agenda passes, and I would just want to mention the donation from, I'm not familiar, I guess it's a company called 1800 Face Shields, and they donated 100 face shields to Three Trails Preschool. So I want to thank them for that donation. All right. Moving on to unfinished business, managed project.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President.
Dr. Shelton.
Yes,
All right.
thank you. Rachel and Melissa, we have a couple of guests that should be joining us. So it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Jennifer Koyson and Mr. Joseph Douglas from K-12 Insight. Recently, we agreed to partner with K-12 Insight for their listening tool. It's called Let's Talk. And I believe it was our last board meeting, we agreed to partner with them with that for that service. And also, if you recall, during that time, we put out an RFP, and one of the requests of the RFP was to do a managed project. And of all the responders, K-12 Insight had the best response for the managed project. And so that's a bigger task, and wanted them to come back tonight and talk to you about what a managed project would look like, and then decide what, as a district, what we would do moving forward. So Dr. Koyson, Mr. Douglas, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you for being here tonight.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for having us. Can you all hear me okay? Yes, okay. I do have a PowerPoint presentation. Would you like me to share that, or would you just like me to kind of speak?
If you don't mind, please go ahead and share that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, as Dr. Shelton said, we have partnered with you with the Let's Talk platform. And I'm currently the head of research for our research team. And within our team, we do managed research projects, which consist of a variety of different surveys, focus groups, program evaluations, and strategic planning. So one of the points that we spoke about when we talked about kind of the work that we could do together was looking at this type of market share, perhaps, you know, kind of evaluating why families are staying, why families are leaving, and really kind of coming up with a partnership and a plan, including some surveys and some focus groups that you could really help get out into the community to gather that stakeholder feedback and build that kind of community and internal trust. And so what we came up with, in addition to Let's Talk, to having that and being able to do that type of campaign, The first is our school quality survey, which is for parents, for campus-based staff, as well as elementary and secondary students. That'll give you all the different aspects of the school environment, including academic support, student support, family involvement, school leadership, and safety and behavior. And that will help us highlight both celebrations within the district as well as some opportunities for improvement, as well as help kind of guide any type of marketing campaign about getting out any of the survey results about those celebrations, both at the district and school level. The second piece was the family exit survey. So this would be something that we would distribute out to families that have already left within the last several years, or we can make it part of an exit package for families as they leave the district in the future. And that'll help us kind of find out not only where these families are going, but why they're leaving. Is it because they're moving? Is it because there was a school nearby that had a program that they wanted? And that type of information will be able to feed and complement with the school quality survey to get you that kind of holistic picture for why families are staying and what should be celebrated, and why families are leaving that are opportunities for improvement, both campus or district-wide. We also talked about in the fall doing some focus groups for parents and staff and potentially even students. And these focus groups would be designed to further explore anything that came up from the findings from the school quality survey and even the family exit survey, depending upon when we launch that. And then once those projects are complete, we foresee seeing and doing the Making Feedback Matter workshop, both for district and school administrators, to help everyone kind of dive into the data from both surveys as well as the focus groups. And even any of the Let's Talk dialogues to date, to not only be able to kind of understand the data and what it's saying, but to walk through the process of being able to take that data and change it and apply it into campus improvement plans and action plans. And we talked about just kind of building out a little bit of a timeline. And so the package that we designed has that first deployment of the school quality survey going out either this month or later into next month, because we definitely want to do it before school closes mid-end of May. We would do school quality and family exit feedback focus groups early fall timeframe, with the Making Feedback Matter workshops in late fall. And that family exit survey, we'll get that together and kind of launched sometime in between the end of the spring semester into the fall. And then doing that second school quality survey this time next year, to where now you're using this year to get your baseline data, and then moving into next year, you can start seeing the trending, and seeing any improvements and gains in areas where you have made improvements. Questions that I can answer for you all?
Yes, I have a couple questions. Thank you for your presentation. So 2 questions. So first, what experience do you have in working with diverse communities like ours? And then second, how do you go about getting people to respond to your surveys, especially in this day and age when people don't want to answer surveys or polls on phones and things like that?
Sure, great questions. So I've been with K-12 Insight personally for almost 5 years. But our actual company, we work with districts nationwide. So we've got communities anywhere from Oregon and Alaska to Texas, South Florida. So within each of those different pockets, we've worked with affluent communities, lower socioeconomic communities, and everything in between. So with that, we're also able to kind of work with our point of contacts in the district to design those deployment strategies that are going to be most beneficial to your community. And especially now, it's been interesting to see in some areas, we've seen changes and improvements in participation as things have gone virtual. In some areas, we haven't seen changes. But for our surveys, we're able to have them deployed, that can be taken on laptops, computers, smartphones. Students can take them in school We also have paper surveys that we're able to do that we can collect back for parents or departments who may not have email access or want to do things via email. Through our platform, as we have that survey window, we send out intelligent reminders. So at any point during the survey window, we're able to send out reminders via email to parents, student staff who haven't taken the survey to help boost that participation. And we also monitor it throughout the survey window. So that's something that we do. And if we feel that they haven't reached kind of the targeted norms that we recommend for participation, then we recommend extending the survey window, and that's all included within the package.
What is the, I might have missed it, but the focus groups, who does that consist of?
So typically when we'll do the focus groups for school quality, we design them and we have groups for parents as well as groups for staff. But we've also done them for students, depending upon the findings that emerge from the survey that highlight different areas that we might want to further explore. Some of the ones that we've done based on findings from school quality have included things like ways to improve both internal or external communication. We've done some student groups on student behaviors, bullying, social emotional learning, and we've done those as well for staff. So it really just depends what we find from the survey that we work together and recommend with you further exploring, as well as areas that are going to be beneficial for you to further explore.
Included on the board agenda are examples of the surveys that would be sent to students and parents and staff. So how does this fit into the big picture? On one hand, we have a vendor who will provide to us ongoing survey data on climate and culture. We have the Let's Talk tool that's also collecting information for us. We have a demographic study that we're going to talk about later on in this board meeting. We'll have this data that we'll collect, and we'll be able to sit with the board and have really 4 data points, or four, lack of a better term, buckets of data that we can dig into that will help us make some good decisions about what we need to do programmatically, customer service, maybe our physical plants, if you will, within the district, the boundaries that we need to have boundaries within the district. So we're on the threshold of having access to an incredible amount of data that we'll be able to use to make not only wise decisions, but decisions that will guide this district for many, many years to come. And so it was at the request of this board that we went down this path. And so this is one of the final pieces of the puzzle that we want you to consider.
All right.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm not cutting any questions off. I was just going to go ahead and entertain a motion to adopt this.
I was just going to say real briefly, I support this a lot. I think we need this kind of data and information to go along with assessing how we can restore the enrollment over a period of time. And without understanding why people leave, it's hard to understand how we can influence them to stay. So I think it's a great idea, Steve, and I appreciate you pushing it forward.
Do you want to go ahead and make the motion?
Yeah, I move we accept the contract.
All right, it's written there. Insights Managed project for a cost of $75,980. Is there a second?
Second.
Any other questions or comments on this item?
I would like to point out that, and Dr. Poison referred to it, the survey that will be administered this spring would be administered in the spring of 22, as well as in the spring of 23.
Steve, oh, I just thought of a question. Will it go to parents of seniors like graduating, or are we just going to do current student body?
Dr. Coyson, I'll let you address that.
Sure. We typically send it to all of your parents. You know, depending upon how your student databases and your parent databases for information. I mean, we do think that it's always great to collect that. It's on that kind of past school year. And I certainly think that it's always worthwhile to collect it, and the data can always be disaggregated by school or by grade. So we'll always disaggregate that and see, you know, if there's one group that's, you know, swaying the data one way or another. And so we can always make adjustments for that as needed.
All right. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Okay, we're looking forward to that.
Thank you, Dr.
All right.
Coyson. Appreciate it, you being here.
Next item, I'd entertain a motion to approve contracts and agreements. This was pulled from the consent agenda, so I'd entertain a motion to approve.
Mr. President, I move that the Board of Education approve the contracts and agreements as presented.
In a second.
Second.
All right. Questions or comments? Was there any questions or comments on this item? All right, voting on the item. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, say no. All right. Adoption of policies. It's a motion to approve.
Mr. President, I move that the board adopt policies GBCA staff conflict of interest, JFG searches of students, JFGA interviews with a removal of students, and JG student discipline.
Second.
There's a second. All right. Questions or comments? Has this been through the policy
This
committee?
has made it through the policy and recommended by the policy committee.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. And move, entertain a motion to approve this next policy.
Mr. President,
Sure.
I move that the board adopt policy BBFA, board member conflict of interest and financial disclosure.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other questions or comments? Ms. Quinn?
You actually have in front of you two different versions of this policy to adopt. This is the policy wherein the board establishes what the limit is on gifts or gratuities that may be received either by board members or by staff members. You can't, and this went through the policy committee. The committee is recommending an amount of $150. That was discussed at last month's board meeting. It was on first review last month. You can handle it one of two ways. You can actually hard code the dollar amount in the policies that are affected so that if anyone is wanting to look up what that dollar limitation is, it's in your board policies on your website. You can also leave the limitation blank and generic in your policy and say the amount will be established on an annual basis or a periodic basis by the board by resolution. And then there's a separate resolution that must be adopted by the board. The downside to using that version is that if someone is just trying to look up what that dollar limitation is, they either have to go back through your board minutes and find where the resolution was adopted, or they have to contact Rachel in order to ascertain that amount. So our recommendation, just from an ease of reference, would be to adopt the version that hard codes the amount in your policy. But it is truly a matter of discretion of the board.
I thought we had to make that decision that we wanted it to be, maybe I missed that, in our policy, that dollar figure in our policy.
You're correct, Ms. Salisbury. That was the recommendation of the committee, and then the board discussed it briefly last month on first read. And we indicated that we would present both versions to the board this month so that you could see what both of them would look like. But you're correct that I believe the tendency last month was leaning toward hard coding it in the policy.
Right, yeah.
So, Mr. Burton, is that your motion to?
Yeah, I move that we hard code it in the policy.
Okay, which is first proposal listed. And who made the second? Who seconded the motion?
I did.
And you're okay with that? All right.
Sure.
Any questions or comments about that policy?
What was the amount again?
$150.
150. Okay. Thank you.
All right, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. The motion passes. All right. Now, before we adjourn for the last time, we just want to take a couple minutes to recognize Miss Amy Tittle. She's been on the board for a long time, 15 years. Can't believe it's been that long. I just want to thank her personally for all the support and encouragement she's given to me over the years and all the great insights she's provided this board. I know she wants to say a few words before we get to that. 15 years deserves some recognition. So I'm going to call on Danielle Nixon first. Danielle has a presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. With me upstairs, and I'm going to come down and present this directly to Ms. Tittle. But can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
And we're going to come down and present this directly to Ms. Tittle, but we have a plaque that says the Raytown School Board of Education thanks Ms. Amy Tittle for a quality contribution to leadership, dedication, and service to the board from 2006 to 2021. So we have this plaque, and then we also have a video that Melissa is going to play for us.
Since 2006, Miss Amy Tittle has served the Raytown Schools Board of Education, furthermore extending this service and support to the staff, students, families, and community members that make up the Raytown School District. Ms. Tittle previously served the Raytown School District for 25 years as a teacher before retiring after 31 years in education. She spent many years volunteering her time in our school buildings, lending her talents to the community at the local library, and attending countless district events to show her support to students and staff. In addition, Ms. Tittle is the founder of the Amy Tittle Professional Development Scholarship, operated by the Raytown Educational Foundation. During her time in service to the Board of Education, she has completed more than 147 training courses through the Missouri School Boards Association, or MSBA, and participated in 188 MSBA-sanctioned activities as a representative of the Raytown School District Board of Education. Ms. Tittle also holds her Essential Board Member certification and was appointed as a delegate to the MSBA Delegate Assembly. We thank you, Ms. Tittle, for your continued support and ongoing service and dedication to the Raytown School District. We appreciate you and the important role you play in the Raytown Quality Schools family.
You are the best! Thank you, Miss Amy!
Thank you, Yaya.
You got a few minutes? Okay, go on you. So before you have to speak or say anything, Amy, just go ahead and give her that and take the picture. But our Danielle, your guys just did a great job on that video, I'm sure. Amy, appreciate it, and having her granddaughter there at the end. So proud of our public relations staff, the work they do there. So.
Are you, you let me hold it? Okay, thank you. Thank you.
All right, and I think Mr. Landers wanted to say a word.
Apparatus.
Amy,
Mr. Landers wanted to say a word.
Oh,
I'd like to say something before you start.
okay.
I want to say how much I've enjoyed working with you, not only as a board member, but as part of the Raytown Retired Teachers Association and a Raytown teacher also for many, many years. We have a long history together here in Raytown. Your experience as an elementary teacher enabled you to bring valuable insight to this board from elementary teachers. Having been there and done that, you understand what we as a board needed to do to support their needs so they could better accomplish the district goal of improving quality education. Your passion for teaching and your understanding of the hardships and struggles teachers have helped us each understand why it's important for us to work as a unit for our teachers, administrators, support staff, and community to continue developing quality education programs for our students. Thank you again for what you've done. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you,
very
Mr.
much.
Landers. And then Ms. Tittle, again, before you go, our state representative Jerome Barnes, he wanted to present something to you too. You know how Jerome, and he's a former school board member, so he wanted me to be sure and show this, and he wanted me to show, he's got a bunch of stuff in here. He wanted me to show everything in here.
Okay.
You know how Jerome is. I'm not going to show it all, but he had a proclamation, a resolution made for you too. So I'll just read some of it.
Thank you.
Some of it was mentioned in the video, but I'll just read the last part. A bunch of whereases, and then it says, now therefore be it resolved that we, the members of the Missouri House of Representatives, 101st General Assembly, join in expressing our utmost appreciation to Amy Tittle for her many years of unparalleled service to the Raytown C2 School Board. And that was done by Jerome Barnes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Wow. Thank you, Mr. President. I want to congratulate Alonzo Burton and Donna Payton for winning last week's school board election. I ran unsuccessfully, but I have had 15 years of successful board service. I want to say some thank yous tonight, and I want to thank the members of this board, President Rick Moore, Vice President Terry Landers, other members, Bobby Salisbury, Beth Plank, Rick Tody, and Alonzo Burton. It was an honor to serve with you, and I'm proud of decisions we've made that have improved our district. And if I miss the board too much, I can always consider running next year. Thank you to our helpful and efficient board secretary, Rachel Johnston, and our superintendent, Dr. Alan Markley. When we hired you in 2008, we made a good decision. And for all you've done for Raytown, I'm grateful. Thank you. Thank you to Gwen Mundorf, our talented lawyers, and all administrators and all administrators and administration building staff, and all building principals and staff. I've been here since 1978 when I came to Blue Ridge Elementary, and hundreds of people have influenced me, but I want to thank a few current staff members. Thank you to Samantha Cox, driver of Bus 9, who takes my granddaughter and all the other kids from the bus stop to Norfleet every day. And thank you to Norfleet excellent kindergarten teacher, Courtney Minnick, who was there at the beginning of our shutdown and led us through March, April, and May of 2020. And thank you to excellent first grade teacher, Nicole Hartnett, who is navigating my granddaughter through the unknown. And those are her words, Mrs. Hartnett's words. and remarkably teaching reading, math, science, and everything else. She also has a student teacher, Summer Walters, who is undoubtedly getting a teaching foundation she'll always remember and cherish. I don't know how they do it, except I do know how they do it because teachers have always met the obstacles and worked through them, over them, and around them. So keep up the good work in the buildings and hang in there because there's just 7 more weeks. I've always said, as long as I am breathing, I will support the Raytown School District. I'm proud to have been a teacher here for 25 years and a board member for 15 years. I'll continue to support the district through the Raytown Educational Foundation by funding my professional development scholarship for staff, contributing to youth sports, and reading senior scholarship applications. Before I ran the first time in 2006, I told a friend that I was hesitant because I didn't want to lose my friends. It's been the opposite though, because I've gained many friends and gotten to know people who work hard for our district, including people in NEA, MSTA, and Ray Team. I've learned about board service and legislation. I've met hardworking people through Missouri School Boards Association and respect their work for all the students of Missouri. My family, my son, my daughter-in-law, and my 3 grandchildren are very important to me. So I hope that any contribution I've made to the district benefits them and all the families in our district. Thank you to the Raytown School District for the opportunity to serve. And Dr. Markley and Dr. Huff, I will see you in the morning at the bus stop. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm going to unhook here.
Don't unhook yet. You got one final vote. Well, let's entertain a motion to adjourn, sign and die for the last time.
Oh, okay.
All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
President, I move to adjourn, sign and die.
In a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries. Okay, so we are adjourned, sign and die, but we're not done yet. So we'll take about a 5 to 6 minute break, and hopefully everybody watching can stay with us, and we will come back, swear in our new members, and take care of some additional new bits. So thank you very much. All right, I'll call the 2021-22 brand new Board of Education to order and call on Rachel Johnson to give the oath of office to our new and current board members. Myself.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Alonzo, would you please raise your right hand and repeat after me? I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Missouri, and that I will faithfully and impartially
and the Constitution of the State of Missouri, and that I will faithfully and impartially
discharge the duties of the school director in and for the Raytown C2 School District,
discharge the duties of school director in and for the Raytown C2 School District,
County of Jackson, State of Missouri, to the best of my ability according to law.
County of Jackson, State of Missouri, to the best of my ability according to law.
Thank you. Ms. Payton, will you please raise your right hand and repeat after me? I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Missouri, and that I will faithfully and impartially
and the Constitution of the State of Missouri, and that I will faithfully and impartially
discharge the duties of school director in and for the Raytown C2 School District,
discharge the duties of school director in and for the Raytown C2 School District,
County of Jackson, State of Missouri, to the best of my ability according to law.
County of Jackson, State of Missouri, to the best of my ability according to law.
Thank you, Ms. Payton.
Congratulations. All right, I will call on Dr. Alan Markley, Superintendent, to take control of the board meeting for reorganization of the board.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. And congratulations to both candidates.
Thank you.
Let's begin by addressing 15.1, election of the 2021-2022 board president, and open the floor up to nominations.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I nominate Alonzo Burton to serve as board president for 21-22.
I second.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to close the nominations.
Dr. Markley, I move we close the nominations for president.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Congratulations, Mr. Burton, you're the new board president. And I will turn the meeting back over to you to elect our board vice president.
All right. 15.2, the election of 2021-22 board vice president. I will open the floor for nominations for vice president.
Mr. President, I nominate Beth Plank as vice president, 2021-2022 board.
Second that nomination.
Are there any other nominations? Entertain a motion to close the nominations.
So moved.
Second.
So nomination has been made and seconded for Beth Plank as 2021 and 2022 board.
Say aye.
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 Congratulations.
Yeah, we can all hear you.
Sorry about being muted. All right, the next item on.
Being muted makes for short meetings.
Oh, okay, well. Next item on the agenda is the appointment of delegate or an alternate to attend the Missouri School Boards Association 2021 Igniting Great Ideas Summit. Do we have any board members that would like to be a delegate and alt? Anyone? Anyone else?
For how many do we need?
It says a delegate and alternate.
Okay, I'll volunteer to be the alternate then.
Okay, do we, I don't think we need to make a motion for that. So we'll have Beth as the delegate and Rick Moore as the alternate.
But I should have said, does anybody else want to be the alternate? That's fine.
Yeah.
Anybody? Okay, yeah, I'll do it.
Next.
Just a reminder, Mr. President, the job of the delegates are to eventually vote on the during the delegate assembly at the annual fall Missouri School Boards Association's conference, which will be held in Kansas City, I believe in October.
Okay, yes.
Sorry, I should have asked this. Does the alternate actually go? I only go if you can't for some reason, right?
I believe the alternate does attend.
Oh, really? Okay, well, I'll say yes, but I do need to check to make sure, but.
All right. Next item on the agenda is the demographic study. Is there a report on that?
As I mentioned earlier, the board requested that we take an RFP and collect responses regarding the demographic study. We had a good response, and the recommendation of the administration is to forward the contract to Business Information Systems to conduct a demographic study.
We need a motion. No, go ahead.
Dr. Shelton,
Yes, ma'am.
refresh my memory. Why are we doing another demographic study?
What, can we get a motion to, do we need a motion to start the discussion?
Mr. President, I move to accept Business Information Systems proposal to conduct a demographic study at cost of $23,500.
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded. Any questions?
I'll answer Ms. Salisbury. This is Dr. Markley. It's been some years since we've had a demographic study, and it's certainly been has not been done since we've started experiencing a loss of enrollment to the degree that we had. And this is just one more piece to the puzzle and more data points that Mr. Tody mentioned that'll help guide us in the future in making decisions based on the data that's given. Not only that data being forwarded to the board, but also as we begin to look at our strategic planning process moving forward into late summer into the fall, is just one more piece of ammo that we can utilize to make proper decisions.
Thank you.
Any other questions in regards to the motion?
I just have a general question. So will they be working together with K-12 Insight at all, or is it going to be totally separate?
I think there'll be a separate, right? There'll be a separate entity.
I mean, it seems like some of the stuff they could collaborate on possibly.
Well, you understand, if you remember the last demographic study that we had, it's quite an in-depth analysis of where we stand with students, where they've gone, et cetera. It didn't give us the information that K-12 Insight, the reasons that they're leaving, but it's kind of given us the trends of where they're going and whether they're going or coming. So, but it'll be utilized in conjunction with that information that's brought forth by K-12.
So Dr. Markley, this demographic study, I mean, I'm just curious. I know we've done them in the past, but I can't recall anything on it. Are we going to find information out like why parents are leaving the district or anything like that?
That's where K-12 Insight will come in, Ms. Salisbury. The demographic study is more geared on population trends, actual hardcore data to tell us. It'll tell us it'll go down to the number of the last 5 years, the number of new permits for building projects, residential, the district. That's something that K-12 couldn't do. So they're looking maybe more on the nuts and bolts pieces of it on the demographic study, whereas K-12 Insight's giving us some more qualitative data.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Is there any more questions? Any discussion? Seeing none, let's take it to a vote. All in favor of the motion? Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Ayes have it, motion passes. Next on the item is the rate team 2021-2022 salary proposal. Presentation from rate team.
Mr. President, I move that the board accepts Ray Team's proposal and add $2,000 to this teacher salary base and add the same percentage, 5.3691, to the base of all other salary schedules.
Any discussion? Or rate team, anyone wants to speak to it?
Is the rate team going to speak, Alonzo?
That's what I'm asking, I guess.
Yeah. I was going to make a comment if when it's appropriate.
We should have, we need to make so that Brian Wise can speak. If we can allow Brian Wise to come in, please, if he is going to speak. And I think possibly Amy Lowe-Smith was also going to speak. There we go. There's Brian. There we go.
Hello.
Take it away, Brian.
We also need Amy Lowe-Smith was also going to be participating tonight.
She's here.
She's here too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hey, I'd just like to say thank you, Mr. President. Ray team recommended the $2,000 to the base, just to make people aware. Raytown is currently ranked at 14 out of 15 in school districts in the local metropolitan area schools with starting salaries. With an additional money to the base, we should be somewhere between 6th and 8th in our local area of competing districts. However, other districts are also adding money to the base at this time. This will help us attract great new employees and teachers. It will help us retain the amazing staff that we currently have, and also recognize all employees that have gone above and beyond in performing their jobs during these difficult and trying times. We are the exceptional. Once the board compensation study has been completed, Ray team will begin working on the 5-year plan for salaries as directed by the board. As a diverse collaborative negotiating committee, Ray team would like to thank the board for their diligence and support over the last 14 months. Does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask Brian or myself?
Yeah, I have some questions. Is Brian going to speak also?
Yes, I believe he's here.
I'll wait till after Brian speaks.
Oh, no, he just is answering questions, Rick.
Okay, so yeah, Alonzo, may I ask a question?
Yes. Go ahead.
You know, I've been involved at this at some detail level, and my concern has continued to be that on the equity side that we're really paying attention to how people perceive and you know, this issue and our solution and your solution.
So that's a great question. What you're referring to is that this is money to the base and not a step. So Ray team, if you approve this, Ray team will then start a campaign of a flyer and a video to explain that steps do not equal years of service, and that the way the salary schedule is designed, money goes to the base. Some years you have a step, some years you can get a combination of both. We've also done research with surrounding school districts. Mr. Weiss and I looked at that extensively today. Other school districts have the exact same policy we have. So I know there was a little bit of concern. I think the concern is out of lack of education. Most people that I've spoken to on this matter understand this will be more money to them. We will show that in depth in our proposal that we will send out if you approve this measure.
Okay, I might finish now, if that's okay.
Sorry.
Appreciate it. You know, I looked at the policy on professional staff compensation, and we actually have a policy that says that we have a salary schedule, and the board, it's the expectation that employees, that teachers will follow, will continue to move up the schedule as on an annual basis. Now, what will happen to the schedule that is in effect currently? Will we put $2,000 in the base? And then let me give you an example. Someone that's on the 14-year level, will that person stay on the 14-year level of the schedule with the 2,000 bump? Or will that person who's adding a year of work, will that person go to the 15th year on the schedule? I think it's important. I just want to understand that.
When we add 2,000 on the base, basically what that does is we're just putting money on the base. There have been the times where we have done an additional amount on the base and a step also. That's kind of at the board's leeway at this point. Currently, we're just recommending the money on the base because it's going to make a better recruiting tool for us. And also, when you look at it financially, everybody makes more money than if they got a single step.
Okay, so if the Ray team is has decided to freeze, to not move up the salary schedule, then according to policy GCBA, the board must freeze that policy schedule because the policy says that every employee will move up on an annual basis. So I think that the motion needs to include a comment that the board will freeze the 2021 schedule. And then we have to, according to this policy, which I didn't write, but someone did, then in 2022, the board needs to vote to unfreeze it in accordance with the policy. And I don't know how the other districts are doing it, but I'm reading it right here and it's pretty black and white. So if you're in agreement with you're willing to not move that 14-year person to the 15th year, if that's your proposal, then I would accept it, but I would amend the motion saying that the board will freeze the 2021 salary schedule as a part of that, as a part of that resolution. Do you understand that, Brian? Did I make that clear?
Well, it makes sense to me. That's never occurred in the past. And I'm a perfect example. I've been in a district for 27 years and I'm on step 23. That's the whole point, that years don't equate steps and steps don't equate years. And that seems to be a big hang up with a lot of people. But I don't think that we have ever in the past done a freeze on it unless it was due to financial reasons.
Well, it does state that in most cases it's a financial reason. This one doesn't seem like it's a financial reason, but if this board is going to comply with its policies, and it may not be the most the biggest error we could make, it would seem that we need to be certain that the record's clear that we did freeze 2021, unless somebody wants to come back and debate us, from an employee or a teacher wants to come back and understand what the record says. That's what the record should probably say.
I think this is a recommendation of rating, and as the board, we can decide, because I was hoping for a recommendation to do both actually. And so, but the board can make a decision as to if they want to include the step, as well as the $2,000 to the base, if anybody wants to amend their motion. Or
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Okay, Amy.
Yes, ma'am.
Would you tell me again what you were saying about you all are making a recommendation to add $2,000 to the base, but you all also are making plans to do something with regards to the step to let the employees know about the step process that's taken place, that you'd like to take place?
Yes, we want people to know that while there's money to the base, the percentage of each person's increase will be greater than what it would be if they had a step. So a step has variance of percentages depending where you are on the schedule, but 5.369 is definitely going to give everybody more of a raise than they would get with a step. So in the past, some people with the word frozen are really upset and have had some issues with it. I think that that's just out of not understanding how it works. And so if you guys vote that we do not get a step, we need to do the education so that people understand they did get a substantial raise.
I like that.
I was going to comment on that also. One reason we're 14 at 15 is because we've been giving small increases to the base and doing steps. Last year, we did a very small increase to the base and did a step. With a step, employees can expect a 2 to 3% increase. Right. This large amount, which is larger than we've done in a very long time with the base, is giving every employee a 5.36, almost 5.4% raise. If we were doing a step on top of that, that would cost another $1.5 to $2 million and be almost an 8% raise for the employees. That's not something we should financially do in a single year. This 5 point, and that's why I've been trying. well, like Amy said, 5.3 is much better than if they were just going to
Yes.
get the step and nothing else. So I think, and we can say freeze in the motion. I would like to avoid that terminology if we can, but it doesn't matter because we would have to vote specifically to give a step. So it doesn't matter either way.
I like
But
Amy's
the, I
idea.
think I think the employees are going to be very happy with this.
I would question if you use the word, if we're going to freeze the salary schedule, in a literal term, that means you're not going to give a step and you're not going to change the base, because we have done that in the past where we gave nothing.
Sure.
And it was referred to at that time. That was even back when I was teaching. They said they froze the schedule. You didn't get an increase of the base and you didn't get a step. You just stayed there. So if we say freeze the salary schedule, does that mean we won't give the, and I don't want to do that. Just a thought.
Dr. Shelton, you had showed us the numbers if we had did both. I think Rick referred to it just now as 1.5 million. Is that the correct number if we actually did a add to the base and a step?
So the current proposal of $2,000 to the base adds $3.6 million to payroll, and the subsequent retirement on that payroll. If we give an additional step, that's another 1.8 million on top of that. So the overall amount of new expenditure would be what, 5.4? My math's correct, 5.4 million.
Yeah.
With the salary increase and the retirement, subsequent retirement on top of that. I as the person who oversees the budget and monitors the budget, I am not comfortable with that recommendation. I am comfortable with the recommendation that Ray Team is making $2,000, adding $2,000 to the base. I would not be comfortable adding $2,000 to the base and giving a step. That 3.6 million that is on the table at this time is, I would say, uncomfortably acceptable to me, but I can't accept it.
I would just mention one other reason for us not to use the term freeze in our motion is because we have frozen literally before, and we literally have some employees out there who are still expecting at some point for this board to make up those steps that we froze, and that is never going to happen.
No, and I agree with your point of view. The word freeze is sounds punitive, but that's the way the policy reads, and I'm not going to fall on my sword for the word freeze. We are in effect freezing the schedule. What I'm asking, when I'm pointing out, and I'm in agreement with you, Rick, that there has been a lot of conversation about historical freezes and people weren't made whole. And I'm suggesting to Brian and Amy right now, if that's a serious problem, now's your chance to speak to us on that issue. And if you waive that conversation, I guess, I'd like to say that all that historical conversation will cease, and that we're now that we're done with that conversation. And I hope we can do that, Brian. I hope we can do that, Amy. Maybe you can assure me, but I would really like to hear that.
Mr. President, if I might add, rather than using the terminology of freeze, can we merely suspend the policy?
Yeah, I don't know that it's dictated that we have to put it in a motion to freeze or suspend. It's the same thing. And I think Rick's point is that we're doing that because we're not giving a step increase. I think that's his point. And I don't know that I'm going to quibble on the words, but I want to make sure that the team Brian and team Amy are solidly behind this and we're done with the conversation about historical.
Well, I think
believe-
that's why they were talking about advertising to the staff, because they know that
Right.
they have to sell that to the staff, that they're getting a big pay increase. They're just not getting steps. So take
Right.
all your extra money you're gonna get and be happy about that. And don't worry about the steps so much. So that's the education that they've already agreed that they need to do themselves.
I think we
Can our
well,
lawyers chime in on
Yeah.
whether, or not, could Shelley chime in on whether or not we have, what in the interpretation of that board policy?
It sounds to me like the recommendation of Ray team, can you not hear me?
yeah, we're here.
Oh, that the recommendation of Ray team was to increase the base and the effect that that has on the salary schedule and not to grant a step increase. And that someone says so moved.
It
or
did.
I-
It
there was-
didn't mention any steps.
Okay.
It didn't mention anything about steps. And what
In
Rick Tody is saying is that in the policy it states that we annually they'll get each employee will get a step unless we as the board freeze it. So
And so typically your motion would include either a step increase or an increase to the base. And so a proper motion, if that's what the board's wanting to do, would be to add $2,000 to the base and to not grant a step increase this year.
Correct.
And that would
That-
accomplish what you're discussing.
I agree. That's a good
That's it.
good suggestion. Amend that in the motion.
I think, isn't that what the motion said? I don't, just add the $2,000 instead of mentioning it.
There it is, yeah.
It just does not say,
Yeah,
to not grant a step. We might
Yeah.
need to add and not grant a step.
Yeah, I
So
think that
it-
would be good.
And so
I
if
think
that motion has already been made, then you would need a motion to amend that to add what we just. talked
Mr.
about.
President, I move to amend the motion to add and not grant a step.
Can I suggest that we say in lieu of granting a step rather than not grant?
Yes, what she said.
It's been moved. Do we have a second?
You're okay with that language?
Why would
For
we
this
say in
year's
lieu of?
For this year's purposes, but it doesn't have to be mutually exclusive.
Say that again.
It doesn't have to be mutually exclusive, so I don't know that in lieu
Right.
of.
Yeah.
Right.
You could conceivably be granting a step and increasing the base and the salary schedule. So I don't know that in lieu of entirely captures what the board has the
How
authority.
about
to
instead
do.
of?
No, you don't need to say anything to what Rick said.
So just what I said, and not a
Just
step
what Rick
increase.
said.
And
And
not
no
a
step
Yes.
increase, and no
And
step
no
increase.
step
I like
increase.
that.
That settles it.
Yeah,
So that's our motion. It's your
It needs a second for the amendment. Well, you could just accept that as a friendly amendment since you made the original motion.
Yeah. Who's second?
Yes.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
aye.
All opposed? Seeing none, the motion passes. Next is the grant writer update and contract renewal.
Melissa, Rachel, would you let Julie Asel into the meeting, please? We, the board and Dr. Markley pushed for a grant writer probably 3 or 4 years ago. And we went to we put out the services through request for proposal. It became very apparent very quickly that Julie Asel was the top provider of this service in the Kansas City metropolitan area, and that's been proven out over time. We're at that time of year where we renew that contract with her. I've asked Julie to come make just a quick presentation on the status of our grants, and then for you to consider renewing that contract. Julie, I'm going to turn it over to you. And you're muted.
Good evening. As you said, I'm the president and CEO of ASIL Grant Services, and we are a professional grant services firm based out of the Lee Summit area. We provide training and services for the full grant lifecycle, from prospect research, organizational and prospect development, to grant implementation and reporting after a grant has been funded. Our organization is not just me. We actually have 16 grant professionals on staff. This is going to be the well, we just finished the second contract year with your school district. In the first year, we wrote 3 grants, which were worth just under $895,000, and were awarded 2 of those for about $475,000. In the last year, we've written 6 grants worth about $1.4 million, and your district was awarded $1.2 million across 5 grants. These grants included the Kaufman grant for the reading specialist that you heard about earlier, a couple grants for social workers that you heard them also talk about, as well as a variety of supports for homeless students. And you have a federal grant to support training and support for 3 interventionists at your high school and with your buses. It also provides case management and outcome software support, trauma-informed evidence-based trainings for classified staff, like your bus drivers and cafeteria managers, and support for building support teams. So in essence, you're talking about 3 local grants, a state grant through Missouri Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, and a federal grant. Your staff and administration have provided us with priorities for which we've been researching grant opportunities, which include continued mental health training and services, STEM funding and a secondary pipeline for students, as well as training for staff. We've also applied for or considered other opportunities to support student academics, safety and security, early childhood, and adult education. Do you guys have any questions for me this evening?
We have hit a lot of home runs in this district over time, but I would say this relationship has been a real home run. Julie has helped us obtain a significant amount of money, which has helped us provide a significant amount of resources for our students and our staff. And this is really, I'll say personally and professionally, a point of pride for me, and I think for our district as well. You've done a great job, Julie.
Thank you, Julie. Is
Thank you.
there a motion to approve the contract?
Mr. President, I move to approve the contract for grant writing services to ASIL Consulting LLC as presented.
Second.
The motion's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All opposed, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Seeing none, motion's passed.
Thank you.
Next is the approval for purchase of secondary school furniture.
Mr. President,
Make a motion.
I move the board approve SSI furnishing for purchase of triangle tables and chairs for secondary buildings, amount of $52,671 under Equalis contract EQ 052920-01.
Second.
The motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
I have a question. Is this funds coming out of our bond, or is this out of the district capital budget?
This is out of unrestricted capital funds, so not bond funds. And Josh is on, but a number of years ago, we started the rotation of purchasing new tables and chairs for the secondary buildings. That's continued. We take bites out of that apple every year, and this is just another bite out of that apple. This is purchased through the consortium. And so that competitive bidding process goes through there. Josh, anything more you'd like to add?
No, that pretty much covers it.
Is this something that I think Rick Moore mentioned last month about moving up instead of waiting? Is this part of that or no?
No, this is separate from that. This is just for secondary buildings. What Rick had talked about was elementary furniture.
Okay.
And we're in the process of meeting with principals and other staff to see what their needs are, where we can move that forward as requested.
Any further discussion?
I'll just mention that Dr. Shelton did say they were going to move up those those purchases,
Okay.
the bond purchases.
So all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. All right, now we're at 2021-2022 school year bus lease.
Mr. President, I move that the Board of Education approve the 7-year lease for up to 10 replacement vehicles through Midwest Transit for an annual cost up to $124,740.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been moved and second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed, say no. Motion passes. All right, updated elementary principal and Northwood's principal salary schedule. It's next on the agenda.
Mr. President, I move the Board of Education approve the salary schedule as presented.
Second.
Motion's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, a question on the salary schedule. This is only for the elementary and Northwest principal salaries. What about the other people? The other salary, the secondaries?
This is to make the elementary principal salaries more comparable to the secondary principals. When we moved their schedule from a 203-day schedule to a 213-day schedule, we found that they weren't coinciding well. The steps in between each were not the same as what they were with the other secondary principals. So we adjusted it so that it's the same now. Elementary is that principals are actually on the same salary schedule now as middle school because they have the same number of days now. So,
okay. So it's just 2021 schedule correction, so to speak.
Yes, well, sort of, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what it is.
And then so thank you. And so continuing then, we will then get a salary schedule offer in the near future, as well as a central office salary schedule offer, and they will be separately discussed. Is that correct, in the near future?
No, what the past salary schedules, the current salary schedules have already been approved by the board. Okay. And when we make a change is when we get approval from the board. And this is a change. So the change of putting $2,000 on the base that you just voted on from rate teams, you actually just approved new salary schedules based on that.
Okay, but that $2,000 in the base also goes into the salary schedule for the principals?
Yes, the movement actually said for all other salary schedules as well. That's what the movement said. It actually
so
said
the
that.
compensation adjustment that Ray team negotiated automatically drives into the schedules for all other employees?
All employees. And that's what the movement, if someone could read that movement again, it actually said $2,000 on the base for the teacher's salary schedule, and then that same percentage added to all other salary schedules. I move that the board accept Ray team's proposal and add $2,000 to the teacher salary base and add the same percentage, 5.3691% to the base of all other salary schedules.
Okay.
Well, I missed that. I would have said, I would have thought that Ray team negotiates Ray team's compensation, and that it'd be a separate discussion based upon the performance of principals and administrative personnel that would be a separate discussion as to whether raises are warranted. But okay, it is what it is.
Well, the Ray team does represent, that's all classified. That's the classified matrix as well. That's
I understand
also-
I understand classified, but for support staff, for administrative staff, there's a goal setting process and there's an evaluation process. And I think that's a part and parcel of compensation review. But so I missed that. I would like to do that one over because I'd like to hear the case for the all other, for the someone besides the teachers and the classified staff. I think there's a different discussion and a conversation regarding performance that should have been had, but I missed it. I won't miss it again.
Is there any other discussion on this?
You're talking about the number.
I believe I missed that as well. But as far as this motion here, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Further discussion? Seeing none, let's take it to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? The nay. Seeing ayes have it. Motion passes. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. President. I move the board adjourn the regular Board of Education meeting at 10:09 PM.
Why not 9:09?
Because we lose an hour of sleep that way.
9:09.
Yeah, no, that clock hasn't been changed. It's 10:09, Terry. You
Is
just
it
lost-
really?
you just lost an hour.
Gee whiz.
One of our longest board meetings, one of them.
Amy got her money's worth tonight.
Yeah.
It's
I
been
second it anyway.
I second it, Mr. President.
Second. Meeting is adjourned.
You're not gonna let us vote on it, huh? Okay.
I figured you'd say yes. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
You got it.
All
Aye.
opposed?
Good night.
No.